Okay. So yeah, we've had a lot of discussion in the gaming community and industry lately about the quote unquote culture war in gaming, about what state the quote unquote like woke censorship type of stuff is in, and then also some concerns people have raised about whether or not there are people on the religious right who also hold perhaps illiberal values and want to engage in censorship or suppress artworks that they find to be offensive, but for a different reason. Obviously, it's a topic that's everyone's sort of talking about. I think all of us here have a diverse array of views probably on where we come from into the gaming world. So I want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves, where they stand on sort of what's going on, and then we can sort of see what disagreements we might have to explore, and then also see too um, some specific what we think of specific things that have happened recently. But I do want to say first that I did reach out to some people who were religious right people and also people who were quote unquote woke people, to invite them to share their perspective. I've also made 2 tweets as well, trying to encourage people who might be interested, other content creators who are of that more pro DEI in gaming, we'll call it, or the more pro religious right, but also pro censorship position. But no one seemed interested in taking me up on that.
Yeah,
So everyone
authoritarians
here
get
is,
bait.
yeah, people with indefensible views seldom want to defend them, it seems. So it might be a little bit of a circle jerk. I do apologize. I did try. I really did. But with that out of the way, I want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. I'll go ahead and start with you, Chris, since you're showing up first on my screen. Do you want to introduce yourself, Chris Ferguson?
Yeah, hey, I'm Chris Ferguson, psychology professor at Stetson University in Florida. Yes, it is named after the hat guy. I have been doing research on gaming for probably 20 plus years at this point. I'm getting old. And I'm usually not like super tapped into the drama in sort of like the gaming community. So I think I tend to be kind of neutrally, I think, in these conversations. But I'm always curious about what's going on, so I'm very excited to talk with everybody here.
Okay. All right. Cheryl Gress, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. As you said, my name is Cheryl Gress, and my husband and I have been running ChristCenteredGamer.com for, oh my gosh, it'd be like 25 years. So we're definitely getting up there. Um, so yeah, so what we do is we review video games and a lot of hardware recently. Video games, we'll look at games, we'll give them 2 scores, one for like how fun it is, and we'll look at aspects like, graphics, sound, stability, controls, things like that. But we'll also have a separate moral score. Where we will point out, like sexual content, violence, what kind of language you can expect in a game, and what kind of cultural moral issues, if there's like, I don't know, like gambling, drinking, smoking, stuff like that. So we have 2 scores, and people tend to like it because they don't bleed into each other. So we just kind of keep it separate, and our stance is, we try to be neutral. We'll just say, hey, look, here's a list of what you'll find in a game, and but we like this list or not, but we found the game fun, or hey, the game was a dud. But, so anyway, so that's just kind of how we do things, and people tend to appreciate that approach.
Okay. Oron Dark Lord.
I'm Auron. I'm a gamer gator. I'm a criminal defense attorney by trade. I think I'm just here because I've been arguing about this crap for 13 years straight.
Okay. And Airplay Doc.
Uh, uh, my name is Ray. I'm the editor and director of the documentary Airplay, which is about the Gamergate controversy, more specifically the Society of Professional Journalists mediated panel discussion on the Gamergate controversy, which was named Airplay. You can find the first part online to watch for free, and the second part to watch on my Patreon at patreon.com/metalheadfilms. And yeah, I've been pretty anti-censorship most of my life, and it had to do with anti-censorship in video games. And yeah, so that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. So I think it might be, we could open the floor up to anything, but I think it might be better if I start with a little bit of a prompt and then people can come in as they please. If people start
Are
talking
we
over each
going
other,
to
it gets
have a
kind of crazy.
streaming link or not?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. All right, give me a second. I will send you the link. Yes. Forgot. But we got dead air right now, so we're killing the content. That's I'll give you 2 seconds.
Oh, well,
Send it.
I'll be happy to share it too if you send it my way too as well.
There you go. All right, cool. Here we go. I haven't even tweeted myself out. I probably should have, but all right. So it might be good if we start with a little bit of a prompt. I guess first of all of us sort of come from a different angle. We have an academic. We have someone who's reviews games and criticizes games analyzes them from a religious perspective, a Christian perspective. We got someone who moderates a debate community talking about this stuff and has been involved in various aspects of discussions like this for a decade. And we have a filmmaker, and we have myself, who's sort of a Gamergate historian. Uh, when it comes to the topic of video games, I think all of us are on the same page, at least theoretically. Um, do we all think that all types of games should be able to be made? That there shouldn't be laws or social prohibitions, for instance, against games that people might find offensive for one reason or another?
I mean, within limits like not making child
I mean,
pornography.
I can start. I
things
mean,
like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. I would say so. I mean, people can always just not play a game if they don't want to play it. I like that idea of having ratings for both the content and the quality of the game, because then people, and parents, whatever, make up
Mhm.
their minds about what kind of games they want to have in their house and stuff like that, and that's fine. I mean, everybody has the right to decide what they themselves play. People do not have the right, in my opinion, to decide what other people play, and I think that's where we get into the issue of censorship and all those kinds of problems. So that's my thought on it.
I mean, while I think developers should have like the freedom to do what they want, I don't think games should be made about illegal practices. Now, granted, I think I could have sworn I posted press releases for like a smuggling simulators and stuff like that, but I don't know. uh if a game was made out there that was I don't know, supporting or promoting pedophilia or whatever, like something illegal, or bestiality simulator, just stuff like that just, I don't know, I think there should be some
Well, what about
something,
things
but
like Grand Theft Auto or the Mafia games?
I think the market would handle most of that. I think I hope there's not much
So
market for the
I
examples
just
that
want
you.
to clarify,
yeah,
Cheryl.
yeah,
When you talk
yeah.
about like these games that you say they might encourage or promote like illegal activity, like there's
Well, I don't know. I probably posted a Saints Row review, and that's obviously a lot of illegals. You have drug smuggling and stuff like that there. So I mean, yeah, you can punch people out of their cars, take their cars, and you're operating a game. So
I think
granted,
we have
I
to
can see it's
trust
fun, but
we have to trust that the average adult is going to understand the difference between doing something like that in fiction and actually encouraging it in real life.
would you
yeah.
would you presumably don't support like the government being like you can't perform illegal actions in a video game if they're illegal in the real world, right? Or anything like that,
Well,
right?
I mean, isn't there? I thought there was like games. I don't know why it is. I mean, I don't mind. I'm glad that it's not there, but like where you can't hurt children in video games or something like that. I don't
That's
know
not
how
a
Not a
government
law.
rule.
The companies have
is.
like Bethesda, like some companies like Bethesda have like internal rules. I think where they have like they don't make games like that. Like Fallout New Vegas, there's kids, but you can't kill them, right? I think some
Yeah,
developers have made that choice, but that's not the law. Government requiring that.
yeah. I wasn't sure how that was being enforced, but I know that as a general rule that was good, that you can't, whatever,
It's
abuse kids
something
in the
most
game.
people would find distasteful.
I'm trying to
So
see if
most
there are
Yeah.
examples
businesses don't
of
do it because they don't think
games. I
that
mean,
it will
obviously there are
sell well.
movies where kids are hurt and killed and all kinds of. Because sometimes I had a student one time ask me about that in movies and say, is there any kind of written or unwritten rule that you can't have kids die in movies? And of course you can, and it's
Oh
not too
yeah.
hard. And kids die or get murdered or have horrible things happen to them
Well,
in movies. But yeah, I don't know about in video games. I think probably there again the
if
players might be adverse to acting some of that out.
The ESRB will also give you pretty
I
much
think again, that
automatic
might be a
M
market
rating
issue.
if
Like
kids
there's just not
die.
much of a market for that,
okay.
perhaps.
Now,
So,
do
so
we?
For example, Marvel Rivals, if you notice, they don't ever specify Penny Parker's age, because if they say she's under 18, they could get an M rating for the fact you could shoot her.
Oh, okay. So
Now,
the ESRB, that's an interesting argument, because a lot of indie developers don't pay the price to get their game evaluated, and I think only time an ESRB is required is if they have a console release, and so PC, a lot of those games are not rated whatsoever, and that's kind of where we kind of step in a little bit. But yeah, yes, I love the concept of the ESRB, but they don't always play the games, and they're taking the developer's word for it. So it's a decent system, but it's not. There's some flaws.
So if
Personally,
we
I
think
think
that,
that
go ahead, Oran, I'll go after.
I think that the ESRB has suffered from a great deal of rating creep since it was created, and it should at this point lose a great deal of its power, if not be replaced entirely by developers simply age rating their own games. So the way that the Comics Code Authority lost its power to the comic book companies rating their own products, and that didn't result in all the content going crazy and people lying about who it's age appropriate for.
I do want to actually ask too, like, if we think that, and you can respond to Oran's point too, Sarah, if you disagree with it for sure. But if these are artistic products, right? The Supreme Court thinks that video games are art. I think most people in society are kind of at that point now, where they think that's the case. And we all recognize that like artistic products like can explore movies, books, comic books, can explore these really harrowing, dark moments. Terrible things happen, like Game of Thrones. You have people, you have children dying, you have people getting raped on camera, right? You have all sorts of things happening. And we recognize that, wow, you can explore these really dark, gritty things, even portray characters doing these horrible things to the public. But it's a work of art. It's exploring these adult themes. If people don't think that their kids, they don't want their kids to watch it, that's their choice as a parent. But as an adult, if you want to consume that kind of product, and if you're a creator and you want to create a work of art that explores what happens to a character who kills a kid, for instance, in a video game, and you want to explore that as part of your artistic experience, I think that that's part of what can make games. That's part of what games can do, right? They can do that in an interactive way, whereas other mediums can't. Like that's sort of like the difference, but everything else is the same, I think.
I remember when
Mhm.
The Last of Us 2 came out, there were, among the many controversies that game had, one of them was that they said that there is never a point in the game where you are forced to kill a dog. And they lied about that. There was mandatory dog killing as part of the game, and you had to do that to progress. And people did not like that. They did not want to kill pooches.
Does anyone disagree with that, or with what I said or what Oren said? Two separate points, I know, but if not, we can move on to the next thing.
Well,
So
well,
I'm just saying some of this stuff I don't think is necessarily censorship. It's just there are some things people don't want to do where they're not just watching it in a game, they're doing it essentially with their own hands.
Mhm.
And if certain kinds of content are in a game that they find too disturbing, that the average person finds disturbing and doesn't want to do, they're just not going to buy it. And it's not going to be financially successful. So I think that you're dealing with an additional barrier to certain kinds of content that you don't really have in television or movies, that people aren't just watching it and they can't just say, oh, well, that's just a despicable villain who did that thing. I'm supposed to hate it. It's something that they might have to do themselves in the game. Even though it isn't real, they're still interacting with it. They're still performing the act, at least by proxy of their character themselves. And if it's something that most people are just going to go, yeah, doing that grosses me out, then it's going to hurt the game's sales. And that's an entirely natural market-based form of, what does the public want and what does it not want?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we tell everybody, vote with your wallet, and I think if a developer makes a game that's really repulsive and people don't want to play it, I think that'll they'll maybe adjust their goals for the next game they make.
Oh,
I
Airplay, you
mean,
wanted to say something real quick?
no, I was just wanting to say something on the matter of taste. There's, you know, as who was it that brought up the point about killing children in uh, movies and movies and games and whatnot. It's
That
like,
was me. Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to bring up, yeah, that's something that you can do in movies, but that just reminded me of Battle Royale, which is a for some reason a cult hit, but for me it's a movie with no redeeming value. Who I wouldn't want to get that banned, but it's just but it's a matter of but it's a matter of taste. That
Understandable.
and
But
that's why
it's
we
also
have
worth
professional criticism.
it's also worth pointing out that there was essentially a significantly toned down version of Battle Royale created many years later, the Hunger Games,
Yeah.
and when it was made less graphic, it did in fact sell quite well.
Yeah, and that was and the Hunger Games is something that I have more respect for than Battle Royale, because the movie Battle Royale, because to me the movie Battle Royale just seems like pure exploitation, and Hunger Games seems like it's trying to tell a story with particular particular themes and whatnot.
Understandable. I
Mhm.
don't think anybody is ever going to make a $200 million budget blockbuster version of Cannibal Holocaust and have it be successful in theaters.
Now that is in terms of, yeah, that's another good example, because in that movie does have unsimulated animal cruelty in it.
So I do want to
Oh,
talk about. I think we
I
all.
actually didn't know that.
I think.
You didn't see it?
I think we. I think
I
everyone
didn't know it was
here.
unsimulated.
Can you not hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they kill a
Okay.
turtle on
So yeah.
screen.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So guys, how do I lost my train of thought now? Great. I was about to move us to the next topic. I think we all kind of agree that there were a lot of issues with the quote unquote like woke left, right? Um, they lied about Gamergate. They promoted censorship. If you guys disagree with any of these points, like yell at me and we could talk about it. But they engage in censorship. They in some cases like they don't support due process, things like that, like things that we would normally think of as traditional like American values or liberal democratic values, or people wanting to live and let live and live in a society together freely. And we all had run-ins with this group and kind of criticized them at points, including in the gaming industry. Uh, do we think that there is a risk of something like that happening with people who are of a more like right wing, or not to criticize all religious people, right? But like people who are religious but also want to impose those values on other people. Is there anything to that, or is this like a fake discourse that's been created by like centrists trying to like both sides everything?
I think that there is always some measure of risk. We have a new presidential administration coming in. Trump has said he's not going to do Project 2025, but he is a politician and politicians lie sometimes. But so it can't be completely discredited as a risk, but I think the risk is much lower, frankly, because the current wave of religious right would-be censors are just so much dumber than Anita Sarkeesian was. These are not people who are good at using her playbook, and they are trying. They are absolutely trying to ape her tactics, but they are not applying them well. Like, you can't pull the "oh, no one is saying to ban things" tactic when you also have tweets circulating around from a week ago saying ban it. It just doesn't work. You can't be hypocritical that blatantly in that short a time frame and get away with it. You've got people like John Delaraz who are talking about, banning porn, with porn defined so broadly that it includes the first descendant in similar games. And then at the same time, people are digging up his old tweets of Pokemon GIF furry porn. Yeah, I would be kind of cringing too, but he has a right to get off to what he feels like. but it does make him look like such an intractable hypocrite that I don't think there's ever a way he's going to get taken seriously.
Well, if you want to steel man him, right? If you want to steel man him, you could say something along the lines of like, we're all human, we make mistakes. Hypocrisy, I think this is what some Ben Shapiro I think says this all the time, or used to, right? It's something along the lines of like hypocrisy is hypocrisy is like good in some ways. Not it's not a good thing that it happens, but it's good that they're at least paying lip service to the virtue, even if they don't live up to it. Because it's them recognizing, I guess, in some way that that there is an ideal that they should strive for, and that they are personally failing to live up to that. And because everyone's human, they're all going to make mistakes. So he can look at furry porn, but as a religious person, he feels terrible about it. But he sinned. He made an error, and he can try and move on from it. If you want to try and
Okay,
steel
but
man.
he's not exactly repenting when he's mad at that Luna skin in the first. I don't know why the first Descendant got this. It's a rather mid-game that's been out for 6 months, and it's sort of falling off the cultural zeitgeist anyway. I didn't find it that engaging, though I did like the attractive characters. But why this, at this point, somewhat old news game becoming this magnet for all of these people to go after? But he's going after a sort of bathing suit skin from that game, and he's going after stuff in Zenla Zone Zero, which I think is T-rated. And at the same time, he's saying that he wants the 1990s cutout 4 cleavage window Sue Storm costume added to Marvel Rivals. It's not, oh, years ago I liked this furry porn, but I've repented. It's going back and forth between Puritan and, as he would put it, degenerate on like a week-by-week basis. It's ridiculous. He doesn't actually live by his own stated values. He doesn't even make a credible attempt to live by them. And at a certain point, you have to acknowledge that if even the proponents of a value system can't themselves live by it for 2 minutes, maybe there's a problem with that value system. Maybe it's not actually achievable. Maybe it just doesn't work in practice because nobody seems able to do it. It's the same thing with Melanie Mack. She got mad about the dance that the character Luna does in the first Descendant, where she's swaying her hips back and forth. She called it her shaking her ass at the camera. Well, she put the camera there because you control the camera in that game. Nobody says you have to stick it up the character's ass. And she's on video doing the exact same dance herself.
What did you think of this? Is anyone could take this video. What did you think of Short Fat Otaku's video? Did you see that where he defended Melanie Mack?
No, I didn't see it.
Okay, never mind then. But that was before some of her more recent comments. I don't know if his views have changed.
I don't see how it's defensible. I just don't. I don't see how she can have a life-size statue of Lara Croft in her room, which I assume if anybody else did it with any other character, she would call a graven idol. I don't know how she can have that and at the same time go after these characters. Does she not know some of the outfits that Lara Croft has worn in games? She's been stark naked in advertisements. I mean, it's covered with like
yeah,
her hand
there was a
or
whole debate
gun
about
or
that, yeah.
something so that you don't see anything. But they've used her with implied nudity. They've used her in bikinis. They've used her as an advertising figure and in games and in comic books and in all sorts of material before the 2013 reboot, which Melanie complains about as a sex symbol, and in ways where she is much more revealed and sex is much more overtly suggested than anything that's in the first Descendant. And check me on this, Christ-centered gamer, but does the Bible not say that it is a sin to get tattoos.
There are references in the Old Testament, forbidding to tattoo your body. Now, with that said, I don't think, if you get them, you're not going to go to hell. It's just something I'd have to look at the context. But yeah, there are biblical arguments. But with that said, I do know several Christians that have tattoos, and I don't think any.
He is an ultra literalist who expressly espouses that if you are not an ultra literalist like her, you are lukewarm and Jesus will spit you from his mouth. Now, if that's literal and she's so literal, I don't know why you would want to be in Jesus's mouth to begin with, but by
Aren't there
her
different
statements,
factions though within Christianity?
by her statements though, if you are not an ultra literalist like her, you're going to go to hell. And at the same time, she's sitting there with a full sleeve of tattoos, and she defends this, and she gets mad at people who criticize her for it. This is not something that she claims to have repented for.
Right, and the Bible also says, to dress modestly and things like that too.
Yeah,
So.
and she's there in a low-cut top with her face caked up in makeup. Again,
Well,
none
this
of this
isn't
is
an
anything
attack
I'm saying
Melanie's
is
claim.
bad.
Like I don't want to just sit on one person too much.
None of this is anything that I am saying is bad. I'm just saying it is not at all reconcilable with the values that she has started claiming to have over the last month and a half.
All right. So,
I,
do you anyone want to respond to that real quick?
I think with just with the oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh.
Airplay.
I was just gonna say that, yeah, is that if you look close enough at any one person, I think you would find some hypocrisy in between the actions they take and the principles they espouse. I think it's pretty common part of human. I think it's a pretty common part of human nature, and if we are getting to the woke right, I think a lot of philosophy, that a lot of people's personal philosophies and philosophies are really just them trying to justify things that they've come to, ideas that they've come to, trying to justify feelings that they've had, and that they've come to conclusions they've come to emotionally with reasons that they've come to post hoc.
Well, I basically agree with you on all of that, but as with anything else, there are degrees. No one is perfectly 100% consistent, but you don't have to just blatantly pull a do as I say, not as I do, and when you get called on it, quadruple down on both your behavioral demands for others and your right to not have to do the same thing yourself. Like, there's no shortage of people who have taken John De La Rose or John F. Trent or Melanie Mack or any of these others to task on the fact that they are not living the way that they demand others live, and the fact that their standards don't really make much sense. And they haven't really attempted to offer any kind of rational explanation for it. They haven't agreed that anything they've been doing in the past or that they're doing now is something that they need to stop to live up to their values. It's just purely asking for one standard for themselves and another standard for everybody else.
So I think that people try. It has been found in many sociological experiments that it is like emotionally and sometimes physically painful for somebody to admit when they're wrong. And so the idea that they're doubling down when people are telling them that they are being hypocritical is not surprising since since it's people are predisposed to defend their own position, even if to defend their own position, not say they were wrong, because the fear of being caught in a uh, logical in some sort of logical contradiction, or trying to be espouse or being inconsistent will in some way, in some circles, damages your reputation, it's and we have never really established a way for people to just openly admit that they're wrong and probably go forward with it.
I don't really consider that an excuse. Doing a hard thing is part of life.
I agree. You have to
Sometimes
do
you
the
have to do unpleasant things.
no
Yeah, but
to
we don't
expand
really have
upon
a
to expand upon that. I I think that what the Goonergate people, if you want to call them that, like what they've done, like is bad, obviously, and they should be criticized for it. And I have criticized them for it on Twitter, if you've seen. But is there no way for them to admit, hey, look, I went too far, I fucked up, I shouldn't be promoting the censorship stuff, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm sorry, and try to like rejoin like the mainstream community
Of
and
course there is.
okay.
That statement in and of itself would be fine. I'm not interested in persecuting these people. I'm not interested in destroying their lives as much as John Delaraz might tweet out ridiculous stuff comparing the backlash he's gotten online to the Passion of the Christ. I am not looking to nail him to any crosses, literal or metaphoric. If any of these people just come out and say, yeah, okay, that shit I was saying was stupid, that's fine. That's sufficient. No one has been tangibly harmed here. We've just had an argument. It happens.
I don't think I don't think we have many cultural uh, examples of people saving face after admitting that they were wrong.
Well, it kind of
And
is. I've noticed this as a streamer myself. Not that I ever make mistakes, of course, but like when other people make errors and they screw up, there's this tendency. Not everybody does it. Sometimes people do the right thing, but there's this tendency that everyone just doubles down. Um, and it's just like even over small minor things. Um, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just part. It's probably a lot of different factors, right? It's partly like human nature. Like people are afraid to admit they're wrong, and then also like to maybe like the cancel culture stuff of the past 10 years. People really got scared because they saw people losing their jobs, or maybe they even know someone who did, and so they're worried that if they admit fault, then then what's going to happen is that they're going to get destroyed. But if they just double down and deny any wrongdoing, then they think they'll be safer because then at least they'll have like a community that will defend them. The community that's also wrong, I guess, right?
Okay, but when you're tweeting out pictures of Jesus carrying a cross and you're likening this to the Twitter
Yeah,
backlash you're getting, you have to
let's
know
show
you're
this on
being
screen.
silly.
Let's show this on screen. I do actually. Do you want me to I'll screen share it here for everybody to see as well. That way, everyone's aware of the tweets that we're talking about, and we can discuss this further if everyone would like. Unless anyone wants to jump. Does anyone want to say anything about apologies and stuff like that before we move on to the tweets specifically about the Christ thing?
I was going to say a couple things. First, was just a minor point or question. Maybe Cheryl can jump into this too. My understanding of sort of like the Old Testament, New Testament was that a lot of speaking to the tattoo question, so I'm still stuck on that. My understanding is like a lot of the rules of Judaism were essentially no longer mandatory in the New Testament. That essentially there's kind of this decision in early Christianity that was eventually made that you don't have to be a Jew first before becoming a Christian. So things like circumcision would be a good example. Like there's no longer a requirement. I think that was kind of like the genius of St. Paul was sort of making it easier for the pagans to convert. They didn't have to give up all their fun things. They just had to accept Christ, and that was kind of like the gist of it. And Cheryl, again, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
I'm not a
no.
religious studies
Am
person.
I
Yeah.
am I crazy, or can we not do screen sharing without Discord Nitro now?
Oh,
I
oh.
don't
There's no
know.
way that's
Um,
the case, right?
I don't know. I mean,
Well,
I
I can
should
just
I
link
should
it.
be able to do it.
The
Yeah.
audience can see it. The audience can see the
Okay.
tweet. So I'll just
Uh,
All
link it
right.
here, and everyone
that's
Because
can
all that
click on it
matters.
at their own
Yeah.
convenience. Yeah.
But yeah, the verse in question though is Leviticus 19:28 says you shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoos or tattoo yourselves. So yeah, so that's like in Leviticus, and there's all kinds of rules and things like that in Leviticus. Like guys' hairstyles and like how their beard should be and things like that. So I mean there are still some standards that are carried to this day. We used to go uh, downtown to visit my husband's grandmother, and we could tell we were in the Jewish part because they had the black hats and the whatever that the hair and the beards. And, that's okay. Now I know where we're at in Chicago, kind of a thing. So some of them they still practice a lot of that stuff, but it's not. Yeah, but definitely, it's all more about faith in Christ and not necessarily your actions and what you're wearing and whatever. So you're not going to hell for having tattoos or shaving off your beard or cutting your hair, things like that. So
All right, we
Yeah,
got.
I think the issue of apologizing or admitting you're wrong. I mean, I tell my students a lot that really kind of humans or all critters are basically motivated by two things, and that's survival and status. So I think the issue to face saving, as people have been referring to, is that these things and require you to admit that you're wrong, and that may result in the reduction of the perceived reduction of status. Anyway, and so I think we've, in many ways, it's kind of evolved. Our programming is such to not back down, at least not in a public context. We could sometimes go off privately and think a little bit, maybe change our stance when it's no longer inconvenient for us to do so. I mean, yeah, of course, when you have people whose job it is to pontificate, openly on social media or whatever, it's probably puts them in a much more difficult situation for them to do so. There's really no time for them to quietly reflect and subtly. People will tend to subtly change their position without necessarily ever admitting that they're wrong. But that requires a little bit more time for people to do that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So I've noticed this too, because does everyone here know Ninetales from my Discord server, who I have for my book as well? Which
mm,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's actually personal growth on her part, which I think is good. But she was against Gamergate really hardcore. And then she talked with me, and then she went on someone else's show where they talked about Gamergate like 3 months ago, like a year and a like 2 years since we met almost, right? Um, and then like in the beginning when she first talked about Gamergate, she thought it was like a harassment campaign and like this horrific,
mm,
horrible like right wing thing, right? And then I listened to the show where she's being like talking about it with them, and she's saying like, well, there were multiple different factions within Gamergate that they all believe different things, and it's like it's like wow, that's actually like it's a subtle shift over like a 2 year period. Like she still doesn't like it though. She still thinks we're bad.
Yeah.
mm,
Not that everyone here is pro GG necessarily. Obviously, there's some people are neutral, of course. Okay, anyway, with these three tweets, first one here, John Della Rose. We were just talking about him a little while ago. He says Christians will not be bullied out of gaming. Do you think a few words on the internet are going to stop a people whose leader was tortured and put on a cross for standing up for the truth? You picked a fight with the wrong people. We have convictions we'll die for. You don't. And he shows a picture. I guess that's from the Passion of Christ movie, um, of Jesus holding a cross, basically. Now, or something like that, being crucified, perhaps. But he's not like quite there yet. Anyway, does anyone have thoughts on this situation, on this tweet here? Is there like an issue with Christians being bullied in gaming? Is
You
this
have such strong convictions that you'll die for, you don't contradict them a week later.
Well,
It
I mean, as a Christian, I mean, I can tell you we have a Discord server and it's got a really big bullseye on it. So, we got people coming on our server and saying stuff, trying to elicit reactions, and then trying to report members of our server who don't agree with them for being, whatever, homophobic or whatever, because we're not embracing the lifestyle and giving them a high five or whatever the case. So, so there is some, bullying, inside of gaming itself. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you had a name in an MMO, I love Jesus or something, you might get made fun of. I don't know. I mean, but that can go for anything. You can say, I love furries, and you probably get made fun of just as well. So, so there's many ways, but I mean, there are definitely, there's bullseyes on all kinds of, people, for different reasons.
Here's one thing that I would like to say about the comment he made is that at the core of it, I think he's right, but he's misattributing it. Yes, there has been for the last decade plus now a concerted campaign by the woke left to target certain identities that they consider privileged or oppressors or whatever like that, and essentially run them out of public life or marginalize them or make them fair game to target. And one of them has definitely been Christianity. It's very stark and obvious that they have respect for every religious background except a Christian one. Or, prior to October 7th, 2023, they did. Now it's every religious background except a Christian or Jewish one. But, so that's the truth. But it's also not just getting told that you're a hypocrite on Twitter after you've been a hypocrite on Twitter. It's people who are doing things like what you're talking about, which is those sorts of mass reporting campaigns. And that's a hallmark tactic of the woke, is that instead of trying to argue, they try to elicit something with which they can go to an authority figure about and get the argument shut down. For example, on the discussion in subreddit that I moderate, r/GG discussion, we routinely get reports spammed on any kind of topic that woke people don't like. For example, I have gotten reports, it's targeted harassment against someone else on a thread titled, EA has formally admitted that Dragon Age the Veilguard was a failure. This is a thread that I myself submitted. So amusingly, this person who doesn't realize that I'm the head moderator of the subreddit is just reporting me to me. But they're used to this working on other subreddits. They're used to just being able to, if anything goes against the narrative, just report it as harassment or as hate or as something in that nature, and just get it taken down by the clique of woke power mods who run several hundred subreddits each on Reddit. I'm not kidding. Some of them, it's like 300 subreddits run by one account. I have to assume that account is run by an organization because it's moderating 24/7 and human beings sleep. But obviously a thread stating that a video game underperformed financial expectations according to a shareholder released by that company is not a violation of Reddit's platform rules against harassment. But they still just mass report it, and they try to get it taken down, or they try to get Reddit to act against the subreddit for allowing it, or what have you, because they're used to all of the moderation positions being controlled by people who have the same ideology that they do, and they think it'll work. But in this Goonergate argument, nobody on the quote-unquote Gooner side has been doing that to Araz or Melanie Mac or anything like that. First of all, because it's primarily a Twitter argument and Elon Musk is not going to ban anyone over this. But also, we just don't do that. So if he, I don't think I can recall an instance where the anti-woke side has done it in 10 years, has tried to elicit these kinds of responses and then mass report them.
Oh, don't worry, Oron. We're going to be talking about
Now,
the anti-woke side in a minute.
Partly, I think that's a principled stance that doing this is wrong, and partly it's because we just don't figure if we do it, it'll work. But so when he's talking about that kind of persecution and desire to drive Christians out of gaming, yes, I think it happens, but no, I don't think it's happening to him at the hands of the Gooners.
Oh, it does seem to me, and of course everyone's welcome to chime in as always, all the time. But it does seem to me like this controversy over the Goonergate stuff, it basically just happened, and it seems like his like immediate response almost to this is to immediately like play the victim, is how I would see it. And of course, like we have people, everyone on the internet receives online harassment. Different communities do as well. That should be condemned. No one should be trying to take down your Discord server, Cheryl. No one should be trying to take down mine, or John Delaros's or anything like that. Of course, absolutely not. But it seemed like his first response almost was like to play the victim, not to like try and reason with the people who think he's wrong, but to and this was in response to this whole thing. I'm assuming, I think, let's see, 113 he made that tweet. So actually, no, I got the timeline wrong. He made that tweet before. Okay, so this was his first tweet, I guess, or at least first one we're going over. But then later on, he replies to a Razor Fist tweet. But it just seems like he went straight to "I'm the victim, I'm the victim, I'm the victim."
Like I said, they are trying to use the playbook that Anita Sarkeesian did, but they are not nearly as smooth as she was at doing it.
They also don't have like the support of big media conglomerates to do it.
They don't.
And I think it's not that Christians are getting like bullied out. I think Christians bow out. I mean, like I said, you mentioned GTA and stuff like that, and a lot of there's Christians all over the spectrum, and they all have different convictions, but I don't think that's a game that my pastor would get for his children, kind of a thing. So like they just won't be part of the audience. Out of that. I mean, and the reason why I played Saint Row, the reboot or whatever, is because it was sent to me to review. I didn't spend my own money on that or whatever the case. So, yeah, and again, that's again, I know you have the Kingdom Come Deliverance on here as well. I mean, I played the first one; it was sent to us, and yeah, and there was just I literally I might have streamed some of it, and thankfully, I don't think I had any sex scenes on my stream because that would have been embarrassing. But I think when it came to like the sex scene stuff, I walked into it not realizing, wait, because I said this is happening right now. Oh, I had no idea. But anyways. But yeah, I just think, and Christians being attacked, well, we're easy targets, to be honest, because we're not one of the more. I mean, okay, within context, we're not gonna blow things up literally because you said something about Jesus or whatever the case, or we'll take things in stride. Now, again, I know I got sent an email today or whatever talking about how or whatever, like how Christianity is foolishness and stuff like that. Like science proves, the Noah's Ark has never been scientifically proven and whatever. But they also said that, hey, yeah, I mean, Christianity has some violent roots, the Crusades and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to. There's no. There's a lot of victims in any circumstance. So I don't know.
Does.
I do want to ask two questions here. One of them is kind of pointedly to you, Cheryl. I don't know everyone's religion here. Maybe other people are people of faith as well. But I guess what I want to ask you, Cheryl, and anyone who's Christian, or if you're Muslim or Jewish or whatever you can, or whatever, right, too. Do you feel like the way that the more like centrist people or anti-religious right in the censorship context people, do you think that the way that they've talked about the religious right and talked about the people who are like John Delarose or Bounty Mac or whoever, right? Do you think that they have been? Do you think that they've been careful in how they've talked about it, where they're not like all Christians are evil, or do you feel like they've kind of gone too far and cast with a broad brush?
So I know you sent the video about the Christian lady as Melanie Mac or whatever.
Yeah, Melanie Mac. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, everyone, you guys are saying how people are hypocrites and whatever. The Bible says everyone's a sinner, right? So there's nobody perfect except for Jesus. But, and then in that video that I watched about Melanie Mack, I mean, she called people she called her people that don't agree with her like losers and stuff like that. So I wouldn't exactly call my audience.
Reprobates is her favorite term.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was hearing losers.
When she
I'm like,
calls people
"Whoa."
faggots too. She loves calling people
Oh,
faggots.
really?
Yeah, not in that video, I don't think,
At a
but like in
certain
other.
point, it went from, I'm not going to be canceled, so I'm not afraid to say faggot, to just shouting faggot into the camera, and that being an entire video.
Oh, really?
Became sort of her entire personality.
Yeah. And then, so we're not expecting. We're very open. I mean, like I said, we wear our religion on our sleeve. Our site's called Christ Center Gamer. We're not hiding anything, So, and that, believe me, we're definitely shot down in the rankings as a result and everything because of that stuff. And it wasn't until it was interesting because when we I think Twitter, when it was before Elon bought it or whatever the case, our tweets were getting like shoved down. We were kind of like gray listed or whatever because like after Elon bought it, people were like, "Whoa, I see your tweets again." It's like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." So it's just so yeah. So it's just yeah, interesting how that happens. But yeah, I mean, I guess obviously try not to be a hypocrite because the bigger the platform you have, the more opportunities people have to look at you and kind of critique your lifestyle. Like I don't, as you can see, my bedroom is nothing too exciting. I don't have a life-size Laura Croft statue or anything like that in there, or or anything like that. But yeah, people will criticize. I'm open. My Steam my Steam profile, I share it. People can see what games I'm playing. My Twitter feed is on the site, so I'm very conscious what I tweet, knowing that it's going to be on the site, and I know there's people that will gladly point out if I say something wrong and be happy to correct me, kind of a thing. But anyways, but yeah, I don't know. So yeah, but I wouldn't definitely I would never call people who read us, follow us, or whatever. I would definitely not call them losers or faggots or anything like that.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? And they felt like the people criticizing the Goonergate people have gone too far? No. Okay. All right. So
I have seen some people who've taken it to a gross place where they're talking about Melanie's used up eggs and
yeah,
so forth. And
that's
that's
obviously they
uncalled
should be.
for.
That's not even like a that. Yeah, that's a bad comment. They shouldn't be saying stuff like that. But that's yeah. That's not like painting Christians with a broad brush. That's like personally attacking her in a way that sucks. So we also have these two tweets here. One's a John Delarose response to the first tweet, and then one is from
I'd also
Razorfist.
like to make one observation.
Mhm.
Have you noticed that it becomes horrible when either political faction talks about eggs? When it's the extreme left, it's that transgender, everyone is an egg that I'm going to crack and convince to be trans thing. And when it's the extreme right, it's the if you haven't had kids by 30 yet, you're a hag stuff. Let's just get all discussion of eggs out of politics except what price they are at the grocery store.
So Razorfist, he's a YouTuber. He's mockingly saying, I sent this to everybody else too, I believe, right? He's mockingly
Yeah.
saying the religious right is back in quotes with 4 Ks at the end of it. And then he says, or the original, quote, religious right moral panic, unquote, was a psyop forwarded by a media you now acknowledge to be corrupt, yet never considered may have lied to you back then. So is this. Keep feeding me roast material, though. This is good. And then John Delarose quickly replies, 6 minutes later, and says, it was always a psyop to try and remove Christianity from the public square and by proxy destroy America. So, what does everyone think of this? Well, I guess first off, do we all think that in the 1980s or 90s and early 2000s that there were Christian extremists who attacked video games or comic books and went too far, or do we think that that didn't happen?
Yes, of course it happened. It's extraordinarily well documented.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, I had those. There was like Jack Chick comics or whatever. There were tracks that they would hand out to share the gospel, and there was one about it was obviously big on the internet when the internet started taking off or whatever. But it did focus on like the Dungeons and Dragons, where somebody's player got killed and she took it so badly that she killed herself. It's like, oh,
And the
really?
ones where the person is playing a magic user in Dungeons and Dragons and they start learning real magic. I wish.
That'd be cool.
Like
so
the guy who played, it's like the pastor who played a shaman in World of Warcraft because he could cure disease, walk on water, and raise the dead.
I want to meet this
But
person. That sounds cool.
Jack Chick.
My take on this is that Razorfist proceeded to tweet out a bunch of images of himself as Solomon Kane in response to being called a Puritan. So if he's, saying that the religious right and its moral panics didn't happen, and then he starts self-identifying as a literal Puritan inquisitor, I don't know how he can reconcile that. And the same thing with John De La Rose. He's saying this never happened, and he also has tweets saying that if you don't want a satanic panic, you shouldn't be satanic. These people are talking out both sides of their mouths, and they're doing it in very rapid succession, leaving a very obvious paper trail. And if you want the tweets on this, I have most of them bookmarked.
Oh, I believe you can post them in the group chat if you want, though. I do want to. You also mentioned Melanie Mack. She doesn't look like a Christian. This is something people have raised. V talked about this too. And then I guess like Razor Fist. I guess like the same critique would apply, perhaps. Like if I'm not as familiar with his content or anything like that, but from like the pictures and videos of him, it looks like he's like it looks like he's like portraying himself not as like a God-fearing Christian, but like as this kind of like edgy, early 2000s edgelord who's gonna fuck with people on the internet. He's got guns and his pictures, which I'm not anti-gun or anything, but like it doesn't strike me as like the humble Christian, And the same with Melanie Mack too. It doesn't seem like they're. It doesn't seem like they're like Christian. If you looked at them, you wouldn't think, "Oh my gosh, these people are like the most devout people of all time." And again, you can wear whatever you want. I don't care, but like it just seems weird.
I saw a comic. I'd have to find it, but there's a comic, and it's even though the artist of this comic, this is probably like their favorite one that they did. No joke, but they took a quote from
Messages are failing to load on the side of the screen.
Bummer.
You don't have permissions for that. I could probably go in and change that. But sorry, in the group chat, I meant the one for the one that Cheryl just posted in, the one with all of us in it.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so I saw there's this comic that somebody wrote about. They quoted some stuff in our Doom review.
The satanic panic. Here he is calling people Satanists.
But anyway, so they quoted our Quake review, and then but they show like me as I guess if there's a nun is saying this stuff about Doom or whatever the case. But yeah, so I'm like, I don't think I walk around with a habit. I don't think I really look like a nun. I just think I just look like your average, whatever, midlife person.
To be clear, I know Christians in real life. I know a lot of people. Most of the country is Christian. Okay, like obviously I know a lot of Christians. We all do probably, but and they can dress however they want, and they do in many cases. But like if you're like one of the most extreme Christians, and they're like trying to like impose your values on everyone else, but you're walking around in like these super skimpy outfits and got tattoos all over, and you're like trying to be like a early 21st century edgelord on the internet. Like it doesn't seem like it's like the Christian values and calling people faggots and like I don't know. It just doesn't seem like I don't know. We could move past this. I don't know. It just seemed it was just an observation I wanted to make. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a dick. Anyway, so do we think that these people? Is it fair to call them the woke right?
Okay, I posted all this stuff in the group chat. If you want to post any of it up,
I probably won't. I'm gonna go to the next. I want to go to the next segment after this. But unless you want to specifically highlight something that I can.
No, I'm just making sure I supply all the evidence.
Of course. So, does anyone? Is it fair to call this group of people, the Goonergate people, or whatever you want to call them? Are they the woke right, quote unquote?
I mean,
Yes.
I can
I
see the similarities because you have the woke left forcing their ideals and agendas, and then I guess the woke right would be the Christians forcing everybody into their
I
ideology.
mean, a large portion of the argument against the woke left was that they were behaving like the religious right, was that wokeness had supplanted religion, that they treated their ideology like it was a religion, like their beliefs were sacred and did not require evidence and things like that. You know, horseshoe theory has always been a large part of this, and at this point, horseshoe theory has pretty much become Ouroboros theory.
what
So, yeah, I think it's perfectly fair to call them the woke right.
I think
or
maybe just the term woke might have been a little confusing, to few people. I mean, I agree with what everybody else is saying, but people might have thinking like, wait, there's people on the right who are pro DEI. What? So I think maybe
What? There's
that might have.
It's not literal, but it's also something that people are
Yeah.
kind of calling them to annoy them.
yeah.
No, I get it. No,
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Well,
No,
I
no,
think it's
I think that,
effective too because, well, one, it upsets them, right? It upsets them in one
yeah.
context, which is great. But two, I think it also helps build up the center, because like everyone can be like, well, we all opposed wokeness on the left. Now we can oppose wokeness on the right. It's the same thing. They just have a different name that they call it, right?
If they don't want to be called their enemies, they should stop acting like their enemies.
True. All
Couldn't
right.
they come up with a better name than Goonergate?
I, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think they called
I
themselves
think
that.
who did that? Was that Short Fat Otaku? I don't know who first used the term, but it might have been SFO or someone else. I don't know. But then they kind of adopted it themselves. Like Melanie, his own video says addressing Goonergate. Like she could have used a different title, but she didn't. Um,
I wish people
has
would stop using the gate format in general. Myself, but that's just me.
has anybody recently read this book by by Hiram and Verlin Lewis, The Myth of Left and Right,
no.
or heard of it at all?
I haven't. But
Well,
I do
there,
think that this is more ultimately an authoritarian versus libertarian issue, censorship,
yeah,
than it is a left right versus
Yeah.
right issue.
their hypothesis is that, as we were saying before about people, most uh, groups really just kind of come to emotional conclusions and then backtrack and then post hoc try to fit their emotional conclusions into a philosophical framework in or some kind of philosophical justification, and they go through the history of what movements that have been called left and right in the past and how they all believe mutually contradictory things, and that it's really just one group trying to differentiate itself from another. So the whole idea be of the of the woke right, because we see people who share some aspects with the where who share some aspects with the right, but also share some aspects with people we associate on the left. Well, people are. It's just people trying to uh po- trying to fit people in these categories that just aren't really that just really aren't fit for or really describing the multitude of differences within among people.
Yeah. Well, we have a country with 300 plus million people in it, trying to divide everybody into like two exact 50% of you are right, 50% of you are left. Kind of silly. These are obviously there's no, it can't be the case that like everybody in a coalition all agree with each other. Like,
Of course.
obviously, there's going to be like a wide array of disagreements across different topics, and
And
people should recognize
there's a
that and
lot
be
of
a little bit more
people
nuanced in how they talk about things like that.
there's a
Sure.
lot of people who don't fit neatly or who have strategic reasons for crossing party lines on certain issues, what have you. I voted for Trump. I still consider myself a liberal. I just didn't think the Democrats were being very liberal.
That's a whole discussion we could jump into if you want, but that's gonna just derail it. So let's
They're being very
yeah,
liberal.
There is one thing though that I think does have to be pointed out in all of this discussion of philosophy as a possibility, even a pretty likely possibility that's been ignored so far, and that's that this woke right thing, these people are just grifting. They very well may not actually believe what they're saying. You know, you look at all of the contradictions and all of the hypocrisy and the various ways that they have made absolute clowns of themselves in public. I think it's very likely that they're doing it for engagement. Because, for one thing, let's face it, since the election, the woke left has been very much in retreat. You know, DEI, wokeness, ugly women in gaming, censorship, that's been sharply retreating since November. It was, to some degree, retreating even before then, but since the election, everybody seems to realize that this just isn't popular. And for some of these people who have made businesses out of the culture war and out of opposing wokeness, they may see the ideological victory as a financial defeat, in that if the culture war begins to wind down, that's going to affect their revenue stream. So they just decided to spark off some other controversy. And they don't care if they're the bad guys in it, as long as they get to laugh their way all the way to the bank.
But aren't they losing followers though by this?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen a sizable decline on their accounts. I think that their core follower bases are just simping for them.
So I will say, I don't know about all these people's numbers or anything like that at all. I'm not even gonna pretend to. But Melanie Mack specifically, if you watch, has everyone seen her full video, including the ending?
I cannot claim to have watched the entire video.
Yeah, well, I got bored halfway through, but I went back because I thought it would be worth it since I'm covering
the one that you shared. I watched all the way through.
I'm mostly following this on Twitter. If I have to watch 10 plus minutes of Melanie Mack talking about anything, I become a self-harm risk.
Yeah, it was past the 10-minute mark. But okay, so Cheryl, you saw it. Airplay. Did you see the full video from Melanie?
No, I did not.
Okay, so at the very end, she talks basically about how it's actually she actually has like an emotional appeal. She kind of like has a little bit of almost a breakdown in the video, which is fine. I'm not going to give her a hard time for that. It's your channel. You can do whatever you want. I don't think demonstrating emotions makes you weak or anything like that. She has a little bit of a breakdown, and she talks about how like everyone in the community like expects her to be this like die-hard defender of all these different like sexy games like Stellar Blade and stuff like that. But that she personally like doesn't feel like that's her values or that's not the person she wants to be. But like she feels like she's in a place where like her audience expects that. And like I don't know what we think about that. Like I think she probably has taken a hit, right? She probably has been hurt by this in terms maybe
her audience expects that to be her position because for several years now it has been her position.
Right, that's the problem. Like she built up the audience and then now
people are not foisting some kind of obligation on her. People are just saying, so after 2-3 years of basing a large portion of your career on holding these views, why are you suddenly doing a 180? And look, she does not have to play Stellar Blade herself in the sling bikini outfit and point the camera up Eve's ass if she doesn't want to. She's already said which skin she likes best, and it's the one where Eve's in the torn jeans and the crop top. And, that's sort of like something that she would wear. And it makes sense that she would like that, and that would be what she would consider the right amount of skin for Eve to show. But if she simply accepted that as her preference and there can be other people who prefer less or more, then that would be one thing and that would be fine. But she's not doing that. She's done a 180 from praising Grums for putting actual bikinis in his long in development hell game to going after games and calling them degeneracy and coomerism and so forth for having outfits that are much less revealing than that. It's the sudden swerve and the overall position that doesn't really make any sense that people are criticizing, not what her personal tastes are in what outfit Eve wears.
Couldn't get over her defending Laura Croft so much. And then, but having a problem with other scantily clad or very sexy female characters, but Laura Croft was somehow exempt. And then, again, there's like that statue in the back, and I'm like thinking, man, if one of my daughters went to church wearing one of those outfits, I would be totally embarrassed.
But so, are we being too harsh? Because I think she talks about that, right? She talks about, not in that video, but like in the past I've seen, she's addressed this criticism a lot. She says two things about the Laura Croft thing. One, she says that yes, there was marketing from Tomb Raider, but that according to her, that like some of the developers or the lead developer, somebody spoke out against that. They didn't want it. It wasn't an officially licensed thing. I don't know. I don't care about that. Doesn't matter. But then her other argument too is that Lara Croft is wearing like more modest clothes. But it's all relative, right? Like if you were in Saudi Arabia, she's obviously not very modest. But like if you saw someone wearing Lara Croft's traditional outfit walking down the street in New York City, you wouldn't be like, oh my god, like whoa, I'm blown away by how scantily clad she is, right?
But it's not just the classic outfit. It's also all of the alternate outfits. It's also all the stuff that she's worn in comic books. It's also the scene in the game where you can walk in on her in the bathroom and she'll drop her bathrobe and then she'll shoot you.
But we don't know what she thinks about that though necessarily.
But that's stuff that was in the game itself, so the developers can't say, oh, this was just something some marketer did. It's stuff that has been in a lot of games and in a lot of official material. And again, you didn't see anything on screen. You didn't see nipples, but Angelina Jolie, when she played Lara Croft in the original films, she got naked at one point. She took her top off. And Melanie is very positive about those films. Melanie has shared in positive context the scenes of Angelina Jolie in a bikini as Lara. And okay, that's not the classic outfit. That's not the outfit that Melanie has a statue of, but she has praised these things. And also, the outfits that she's criticized in The First Descendant and things like that, they're not the default outfits either. They're also additional skins that you buy and you put the character in if you choose to. The default outfits in The First Descendant are generally fairly covering because it's their business model to encourage you to buy the sexier outfits so you can see this character more scantily clad. And as a consequence of that, it's very difficult to say that this is being forced on you if you are looking at your characters that way in that game. It's because you went out of your way and even paid extra money to see them like that. So if that's her standard, then things like alternate skins, movies, comic books, advertising, etc. have to count for Lara Croft too.
Well, the problem with those games, though, you buy those skins, but other players, if it's a multiplayer game, they would have to see that same thing, right? Even though if they didn't buy it or they didn't want to see it, they would still be shown that.
Yeah, in multiplayer. I don't think some of the Tomb Raiders might be multiplayer. I'm not sure, but I don't think most of them are.
I don't think so. But yeah,
okay, I don't know anything about I don't know anything about The First Descent. Is that just a single player game, or is that multiplayer, or what is that? I'm not even sure. I haven't played.
Yeah, you do see other people's skins, but you know the video that she was that started all this with the character Luna in a particular swimsuit outfit, which is cut very similarly to an outfit that Lara Croft has worn. It was the players, I don't know if it was Melanie's own footage or someone else's footage she was commenting on, but it was the player's own character with the camera.
Yeah, I saw the video.
As close as you can get to basically sticking the camera up the character's butt.
Yeah.
The person who was filming that, whether it was Melanie or someone else, had gone out of their way to create as sexual a scenario as they possibly could within the confines of the game, and was putting that out there. So I'm not going to say it's not normal, because that's what a lot of people play that game for, but it's not something that you're going to encounter unless you seek it out.
I guess here's another question down. As a female gamer, I don't want to play a game and I don't want to see 3/4 naked girls playing. Now, I just wonder what would happen if a developer were to like level the gaming field, or playing field rather, and what if they made equally skimpy male outfits? Now, how would the gamers, because if they're all about beauty and aesthetics, what about equally attractive males walking around in whatever, little...
I don't think that anybody would really care.
Okay.
I'm
Based.
not sure if
No.
First Descendant has any skins like this, because that's how little attention I pay to it as a straight guy. But I know that there are a bunch of skins in Marvel Rivals, which is currently wildly popular, where male characters have no shirt on and they're wearing just like, tight shorts or what have you. There's one guy who's basically in a Speedo in one skin. And there's, I saw a video this morning that somebody showed me of a VTuber playing the game, and one of the jokes that they make is that they're taking cover underneath a statue of Black Panther, and at one point they notice that if they look up under the statue, they can see his bulge. And nobody playing Marvel Rivals, which had something at one point like 650,000 concurrent players on Steam, nobody seems to be complaining about this. Nobody seems to be upset. Nobody seems to mind. I mean, anybody who likes Marvel Comics has watched the Hulk run around in nothing but his purple shorts for decades. It never seems to get the same kind of negative attention. I don't think that anybody really even notices it with the guys unless somebody's actual dick is flopping around. And you never actually see a woman's genitalia in these games either, unless it's overtly an adult game.
So I do want to move us on to the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 controversy soon. I know Chris has to head out relatively soon here, within the next 10 minutes or so, right? Maybe a little bit less. So, Chris, do you want to give your thought? Oh, I'll lay out real quick, and then I'll let you give your answer, because I know you got to go.
Yeah.
So, there's been a couple controversies about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. The developer Warhorse Studios, they were pro Gamergate, or at least Daniel Vavra, their head. They supported Gamergate. They spoke out in defense of artistic freedom back in the Gamergate days, and were criticized for their game not having enough diversity, I believe was the complaint from like the progressive woke left side. More recently, their sequel has been criticized for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was because, or three reasons that people have criticized the game for. One of the reasons was because there is a rumor that there is a gay scene in the game where players can choose to optionally engage.
It is at this point no longer a rumor. That's confirmed at this
So
point.
that's you have the option. It's a role playing game. You have the option to engage in a gay romance if you want to, but the game will also, because it's set in medieval times, supposedly the characters will all recognize that it's not like commonplace or socially acceptable in that time period, and so presumably they're taking that into account. I believe Bavra has indicated that that it's not going to be like an openly public gay relationship. Um, but then also too, there's another rumor that people are criticizing the game for, and it's that there's a character who's from the Mali Empire, supposedly.
This is also now confirmed. It's no
Okay.
longer a rumor. That character
Okay.
exists.
So the Musa of Mali, people have called him. I don't know if that's his official character name, but he says in there. Actually, you sent me the screenshot. Do you still have that, Oron? I probably should have had this beforehand. I do apologize for not being prepared.
I don't have it on hand. Let me grab it.
Okay. But basically, while he pulls that up, I'll give a very brief summary, and people can yell at me if it's not accurate, or you'll see in a minute if I'm lying. But basically, TLDR, he criticizes the country where the game takes place in, which is the
I
Czech
linked it in the
Republic,
channel.
Bohemia. Okay.
Right.
He criticizes that region, and he praises his country instead. Here, I'm gonna open this up now, and I'll show. What the? Did I? Hey, 2 seconds. God, I'm terrible. This is horrible content, guys. I'm so sorry.
He's criticizing the modern Czech Republic.
No,
And
he's criticizing the Czech Republic in the time period. So
Bohemia. Yeah.
he says overall it is safer in our country. Nobody will waylay you on your journey, and we treat women with greater respect and set great store by learning. So he's being negative towards the Czech Republic, but he's kind of like praising where he comes from, which people say is supposed to be the Mali Empire. And
Okay.
people say, well, Oron, you've said um, that you don't like this, but I'll let Chris give his answer first since he's about to leave.
Okay, yeah, I do have to. I apologize. I do have to leave in a few minutes. So, of course, I'll preface this by saying I haven't played the game. I've read about it. So I've seen some of the dialogue back and forth. Yeah, I have a couple thoughts, about that. I mean, I think the controversy seems to be whether, some of what I read at least was this again a cutscene. I think that's featured, or again, whether that's a rumor or if it's been confirmed at this point that's supposed to feature, I guess some kind of gay sex scene. I don't know how explicit it's supposed to be necessarily. And I guess the controversy that what I was reading was some people were saying it was forced. You couldn't skip it, you couldn't get out of it.
That's not
kind
true.
of thing.
That's been confirmed as not true, by the way.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's just what I had read. So I mean, I don't know if obviously if they want to write a video game with gay characters, they have the right to do that, and if people have the right not to buy it if they don't want to buy it. I'm not sure for me where that's a controversy. I mean, obviously there were gay people, throughout history, and you can find examples even of monarchs who, probably didn't live openly gay in the way that we think of it today, but at least it was kind of a version of a, don't ask, don't tell. I'm thinking of like Richard the First and Richard the Second of England, for instance, who are, largely known to have been gay. And such. So, I mean, it certainly is something that happened. It certainly was not socially accepted. There were considerable risks that people would have run had they been caught during those time periods. As far as, having a game with gay characters, I don't see the problem unless you surprise the players with it and they're not able, if you have the role-playing option of pursuing a gay relationship or not, then that's just the choices you make in the game, and I'm not sure I see why that's controversial. As in regards to the comment of Bohemia versus Mali, I mean, the reality is in terms of like the best estimates we have in terms of like crime or like mistreatment of women or things like that is that this was like universal. Like horrible treatment of human beings was universal to all cultures through almost all times of history. Homicide rate was enormously high in most cultures, including indigenous cultures throughout history, until about the 1800s, with the advent of modern policing. And then you see a rapid drop in violence between humans from that point forward, and mostly into the 20th century. So, I can see why people would be irked by that comment. But, on the other hand, if it's just dialogue in a game, too, the dialogue that characters make don't necessarily represent the views of the author, right? We've seen that controversy come up with some novels where a novelist will have a character say something racist, and then people are like, that means the author's racist, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, they're just dialogue, and I'm certain that a diplomat or representative of Mali in Yeah, I think the game takes place in the 14th century, if I remember correctly. You know, absolutely would have portrayed their country as a peaceful utopia. You know, so it's just dialogue in the game. It doesn't mean that it's true, or even that the developers necessarily think that it's true. Now, yeah, maybe they do. Maybe the developers here are really a little bit historically distorted. I don't know, but I wouldn't view that as like prima facie evidence that the developers believe that the Mali Empire was a utopia and Bohemia was not necessarily. If that makes sense.
Chris, can I waylay you on your journey for a moment? Because I want to see your
Yeah.
response to Oron's answer. So, Oron, do you want to lay out why you don't like this criticism of Bohemia from this gentleman?
Okay, who here remembers the cringe-inducing Gillette ad in the wake
God,
of
yeah.
Me Too, and the bit where all of the men who were mistreating women were white, and then the only men who were intervening to stop the mistreatment of women were black? It
I do
kind of
remember that. Yeah,
reminds
that was bad. I do agree. That
It
was a
kind of
terrible moment.
reminds me of taking that ad and sticking it in the game. Now,
Yeah.
if Musa is meant to be a dislikable, villainous, arrogant character, and he ends up getting his comeuppance, that's one thing. If you, as the player role-playing Henry, can respond in a similarly nationalistic fashion as, a crusading knight might have, which is to call him a foreign devil and then cut off his head, that's a different story. But, somehow I suspect that's not something that they're going to allow. And having this character whose main purpose in the game seems to be the black guy tut-tutting at all the white guys smells kind of fishy.
To be clear, like you're basing this on like one screenshot.
Yeah, I know, but it's also part of a larger pattern that I'm going to lay out, because my opinion on this, this screenshot did not just surface last week. This got leaked a while ago, and it wasn't controversial until relatively recently, so I want to lay out my chain of reasoning here. This really blew up when people started getting antsy about the unskippable gay cutscene rumor, and instead of actually addressing it, Daniel Vavra's response was to find someone on Twitter, one among probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people who had spoken on the subject, who had an overtly neo-Nazi avatar. And I don't mean everybody we disagree with is a Nazi. I mean, this guy actually had a Nazi black sun as his avatar. And just get huffy and in the guy's face. And, well, I don't respond to Nazis like you. And okay, fair enough. But you also didn't respond to the hundreds of people who were not Nazis.
He did.
Who were
He replied to like 3 or 4 tweets.
It was a lot. It was blowing up on Twitter that day. It was not hundreds in that one specific thread.
No. I mean, Barbara did respond to other tweets too. He responded to like 3 or 4 others.
That was later. Okay. But first he did that. And then people were like, I don't know, that kind of triggers pattern recognition here. And then the next day, while people were waiting for a response, first they said, oh, don't believe everything you hear on the internet. And, well, I guess we should believe what we hear on the internet, because the vast majority of it turned out to be true. But then the next day, they impose a code of conduct on their forum with all the usual vaguely written articles about hate speech and homophobia, transphobia, all that stuff, which is, defined so broadly that biased community managers can use it to shut down all dissent and then characterize that dissent as having been hateful, whether it was or not. And by this point, people were saying, okay, I guess we lost him.
He said he tweeted. He said he had to go. He said he.
Yeah, fair enough. By this point, people were saying this matches the pattern of how other very woke developers have done damage control for obvious DEI stuff in games. So why shouldn't we consider it similar?
But I don't consider it bad
And
for. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. My bad. Go
and
ahead.
then this went back and forth, and then Vavra finally tried to clarify. And he said, okay, first of all, nothing is forced. You don't have to have a gay romance. It's an option. And, you know, Musa of Mali, he's there with the King of Hungary, and, you know, it's a more complex thing. And people were like, okay, so maybe we'll give him a chance on this. And it was sort of this waffling back and forth, and then Grums put up a poll about whether people think the game is woke, and it was nearly split perfectly down the middle, like within anything that you would consider margin of error on something as informal as a Twitter poll. I think it was 53-47. And you know, for the record, I voted at the time that it's not woke, because at the time I was going off of the explanations that Vavra had given, and I considered that sufficient. But ironically, now, a day or two after the poll has concluded, I would change my mind and I would say that the game is woke, because a screenshot surfaced from a Q&A, and I've linked that. Well, when it processed. Now I've linked it in the channel.
I'm gonna bring it up on
where Vavra very explicitly said in the marketing for the first game that Henry is a predefined character with an explicit identity, and he is a straight white man. So now, despite having characterized him that way previously, he's instead made him a sort of player sexual character where he can be gay if you want him to. So that's now going back on what he said. And when people on Twitter, or maybe it was on their Steam, I think it was on their Steam forums. People on their Steam forums called them on that and said, hey, wait a minute, why are you saying this now when you said that then? Some snarky community manager proceeds to make fun of the guy and say the only reason that Henry was straight in the previous game was because of budget limitations. I mean, if you're not even then taking the criticism seriously, you're just mocking people for it. And I don't think it's at all unfair for people to say, why are you saying something different now than what you said then? And at this point, my very strong suspicion is that after Vavra sold his company to the Embracer Group, and note the Embracer Group are the people who created that woke Saints Row reboot that put Volition completely out of business, they probably had mandates and rules and DEI policies in their company and for the games that they published that Vavra had to comply with. And as we all know from previous instances, publishers can not only strong-arm developers into making changes to their games, they can also strong-arm developers into claiming that those changes were their free creative choices when they are later proven to not have been. Remember the recent controversy where a developer on Dragon Quest, the remake of Dragon Quest, gave an interview where they said, no, none of this was our free choice in terms of a bunch of censorship, and Square Enix proceeded to nuke the interview off the internet as best as they could and essentially force the developer to do damage control and deny having said what he just said. You know, or Sony with Stellar Blade, where they made the guy who made Stellar Blade pretend that he'd never intended to put in the costumes that they'd censored out. And that ultimately caused the big backlash where Drums did that petition and he successfully got them restored and got the game uncensored. But so we know that publishers not only strong-arm developers routinely, but they sometimes also strong-arm the developers to publicly say that they weren't strong armed.
Which Vavra has, to be clear, publicly
Yes.
stated. But I
Yeah,
do.
so
Okay, you said a lot,
because
Oron. Let's wrap
Vavra
it up in like
says,
30 seconds, okay?
yeah, so just because Vavra says that this is his free choice doesn't necessarily prove that it's true, given that pattern, and given that he's now been caught saying one thing when he was advertising the previous game and a different thing when he's advertising this one. So at this point, I'm probably not going to buy this game.
Okay, that's fine. Don't buy it.
I don't like being lied to, and I don't like being jerked around.
Okay.
And that is frankly more important to me than the content itself within the game. I'm not going to say that I don't care about something like the Musa of Mali line. I think it's cringe, but it's much more important to me whether the developer is honest with his customers.
Can I just say that discussing whether or not a piece of media is woke or not, I just find to be incredibly an incredibly boring discussion. It's the thing that I find least engaging about media, and I feel like it's taken over just all discussion, whether
Well,
or
I
not
wish
something.
I wish it weren't necessary, but
Yeah.
it is,
I'm not sure it is.
because so much stuff has gotten changed, has gotten censored, has had these ideological mandates imposed on it. So many companies have been taken over in ways where previously talented people have been forced out because of their politics, and they've been replaced by people who were hired for either identity or ideology. And it's very negatively impacted the quality of the games that they're producing.
Yeah, but
And people have to talk about this, and people have to be active about it if we want this to stop. And I
Yeah.
very much do want this to stop.
Wait.
And it looks like it
but
only
something I
will
wanted to say
if a lot of these woke games fail.
during the Melanie Mac discussion, it just feels to me that Melanie Mac is a person who doesn't really know how to engage with media, doesn't know how to talk about media, and it's just that she doesn't know how to be discerning. Like when I talked about when I talked about Battle Royale, again, it's a movie that I think has no redeeming qualities. That is apart from the fact that it's simply a violent movie. I love plenty of violent movies. The point is that the violence is used in a way that's really kind of exploitative. Like, and like say with Quentin Tarantino, I like a lot of his movies, but I just absolutely loathe and despise Kill Bill because I find that it's his most exploitative movie. That it uses the violence in a way that's just really kind of not that really kind of dishonorable to him, to his own work, and to the and disrespectful to the viewer. Now, I can still enjoy a lot of his other work. The same thing goes with Hateful Eight. I can still enjoy a lot of his other work, but still have the discernment to call out what I don't like about Kill Bill and the Hateful Eight. And so it just feels like with all of these political ideological slants to media criticism and whatnot, it is just encouraging a discourse that is incredibly boring and just not really helpful at all at getting people to appreciate media and whatnot.
So, Cheryl, do you have something you want to say right now, or do you want me to go full edgelord?
Well, okay, so when it comes to the woke stuff, the problem is that people don't want agendas shoved in their face. I mean, if you look at classic games like Mario or Duck Hunt or whatever the case, those games are just fun. Didn't care whether what kind of clothes Mario was fully clothed or whatever. I mean, my gosh, they had a panic when he put him in a swimsuit without a top. But but most of them, I mean, I want games to be fun, not games to be checking the box like, okay, do we have a black person in the game? Good. Do we have a Hispanic representation? Do we have Asian representation? Check. Oh, wait, now we got to have LGBTQ stuff. Check. They're focusing on all this inclusiveness, and then and the gameplay is just mediocre. So just get back to making a good game. People don't really care about the sex lives of the characters involved, and they're actually kind of better without that
What?
nonsense in them.
No. So I will defend. You can have sex games if you want in your game. You make whatever game you want. I don't care. But like, I think that like the romances in like Mass Effect, for instance, were really well done for the most. I mean, I've not played all of them. Like, I hear some of them like Jacob's aren't that great, but teach their own. But like some of the romances there, I think are really well done, and create this like really great, compelling story over the course of like three. I romanced Liara primarily. Like this really great
Liara is
story over
best
the.
girl.
Yes. But I think, and also too, like when I sent out my optional survey, which I'm sure all three of you maybe have taken, I don't know if you have or not. Some of you maybe have. But like when I include there at the very end, I asked people kind of as a joke, fun question, like who did you romance in like Mass Effect or Dragon Age or like these other games? I think a lot of people do take enjoyment and fun for that. But if other players don't, like that's totally fine too.
It's very much a thing in RPGs specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, or like
If
choose your own
it's
adventure, like kind of stories sometimes too.
if it's an M-rated RPG, you're probably going to come out of it knowing which characters want to sleep with whom.
Now, Chad, I mean, do you want to push back on the? It's just personal taste, really, I guess, really. But like, did you want to like offer like a rebuttal or anything?
I haven't really played Mass Effect, so I can't say who the best person to romance is.
Fair enough. But like, I think I personally find enjoyment in like some of that. Like, it can be if it's well done, right? It just like there's poorly written romance stories, but I feel like there can be value added to a product, to an artistic work because of that, if it's done well by the developer.
I will say though, my husband can vouch for this, and if you look at that site, I do get sent, and I happily review Otome visual novels, which is like a reverse harem. So I'm totally fine with like, oh, okay, yeah, these are good looking guys and whatever, and what. But I don't. I actually prefer. I was actually surprised. I just typed up a review today, for a game, Tengoku's Struggle Stray Side, I believe it was called. And what's interesting, this is a teen rated game, and I would have given it a mature rating because a lot of the previous Otome novels, visual novels I've played, not all the routes went sexual. Sometimes they ended with a kiss or whatever. And that was as far as it went. Where every single route on this one had sexual content, and now it went as far as describing hands wandering in places, lifting up the skirt, spreading the legs. And this is a teen game, and it's like, but then it would cut short there, like a screen, black fade to black there, and it's just like, wow, that's just a little bit more detailed than I expected. For a teen-rated game, not knowing, obviously I figure, yeah, there's whatever dating and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely get the value. It is fun, to read through romances and stuff like that. So I'm not going to discredit that, but I just don't think it has to be in every game.
No, it doesn't have to be in every game. Yeah.
Like if you're playing a race, like a racing NASCAR game, you don't have to like be a race car driver banging another one. It just focus on the racing. Yeah, it doesn't matter, or whatever. If they want to have I don't know, pride flags on the race cars, whatever they want. I don't care. It just doesn't have to be there, but it is what it is. Enjoy games for what they are and what they're whatever. I like a good story, so I like RPG games or whatever. And if there's an option, to romance or whatever, fine. I might, may do it. And it really depends. Most of the times, I guess I will. But yeah, there's all different kinds of games, and it just doesn't have to. If you're like in a survival horror, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be part, romance too. Just survive and get out of there. That's it.
Well, we're gonna be talking about a survival horror game in a minute, but I got so many thoughts on the conversation. You've all given a lot of food for thought. I've taken a few notes. So, man, what do we want to start? Do we want to start with Musa, or do we want to start with the gay stuff? Oron, I'm gonna fight with you the most, I think. So you pick.
Musa, whatever.
Okay, Musa. I was edgy with you, or a little
Is this
tongue in
like a
cheek.
duel where I get to choose the weapon and you get to choose the battleground?
I want to talk about both. We can talk about both. We can talk about whatever you want. I don't care. That goes for all of you. But okay, so Musa, I think you said that, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting or misunderstanding, but I think you said basically that your position on the Musa stuff was, at least at the time, that you can have a black, that you can't have a white character go to Africa and criticize African countries, including like Mali, for instance, right? But you could have, but the fact that you're, that essentially that game developers would be afraid to do that today because they would be worried about backlash, right? But you're saying essentially that that if that is the standard that some people have set or imposed, then then it's wrong for Daniel Vavra and the development studio here to have a black character that goes to Europe and criticizes Bohemia because it's a quote unquote like a white country, right?
Yeah.
But that's just, in my view, that's imposing the woke standard and like reinforcing the woke idea. Isn't the better one that we should be advocating for that like you can do both?
Okay, so let's see them do it.
Who's them? I mean, like they're all individual actors, billions of people on Earth. Like they're all individual people. Like I don't think Daniel Vavra was like attacking game developers for not having.
Can you name any other game published by the Embracer Group that's done it?
I don't even know what games they've made.
You've got hundreds to pick from. You've got hundreds to pick from.
I don't care.
Show me that the publisher would allow similar content.
I don't care, bro. I think it's a special snowflake thing a little bit, okay? I think that you're looking for a reason to be offended by it. I don't think it's a big deal. I think if you are upset that you can't have a white character criticizing African countries, I think that if you're worried about that, then you should find the people who are criticizing the people who are criticizing artists for putting that in their work and be like, hey, look, that's wrong, and talk with those people rather than like just mess with this random developer who does like the quote unquote opposite.
I remember in the run up to God of War Ragnarok, I don't remember which of the developers who was doing it, but one of the developers was defending the idea of Angerboda, a Norse mythological figure, being black. And I said to that developer that I will buy the game if they will make a public commitment that since they've now used the Greek pantheon and the Norse pantheon, that the first time that Kratos goes to some area outside of Europe and gets in a fight with the pantheon of gods of some non-white culture, at least one of those gods who is not a villain will be white. Of course, I got no response. Nobody is going to even acknowledge that. Nobody is going to apply the standard consistently like that.
There shouldn't be standards at all. It should just be free speech, bro. That's my view.
Have
you seen
They are. This is reality, and we have to live.
It's not even reality anymore, bro. I feel like the woke shit, like the woke left stuff,
the reality.
It's done. It's
Have
it's
you
out the
seen
window.
the Technicolor pantheon of gods some Asian countries have?
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know
I
where
don't
Good
think.
word.
I don't
Well,
know where
two
they go.
things.
Maybe he'll fight the Egyptian gods. Maybe he'll fight the Chinese gods. Maybe he'll get in a brawl with Buddha. That would be pretty funny to see. But look, this is the industry. And if you want me to accept this stuff, then show me that you will do the politically incorrect stuff too. Show me that this is about narrative and not about ideology. If this is something that you defend as okay, a lot of people in that time period would have been very nationalistic. They would have played up their culture as superior. They would have considered the other guys weird foreign heathens. Okay, that's fine. But show me it goes both ways.
Well, I would just say you say do the political stuff, politically incorrect stuff too, right? But that's not the job of any individual developer. It's not Daniel Vavra's job to like make sure that he's attacking both sides or that he's like being a political activist. In fact, that's like kind of what you don't want him to do, I think, right? Like what his job is to do is to make a good video game and to like create the artistic vision that he wants. If his artistic vision
But then
has
you also
Musa
can't
being
claim
a nationalist but not having Henry be a nationalist or whatever, right? Or maybe Henry does have a choice. I don't know. But like the fact that that's his artistic vision. Like it's not his job to like correct for the inequalities of society, right? Like that's kind of
Are
what
you
you're
gonna let
asking
me
him to do,
respond or
right?
not? Are you gonna let me respond or not?
Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead, please. Go.
Okay, sure. But it's also my money. And if he wants my money, then he has to produce a product that I'm interested in. And if I notice that it fits a pattern that I don't like, look, I don't have to read his mind. I don't have to go into court and prove his agenda. I don't have to do any of this stuff because it's $60 of my money and the economy is terrible. So $60 is quite a lot of money. And if I suspect I might not enjoy it or I might sit there getting annoyed about it, well, why am I not going to play something else? There are other options. I have a huge Steam backlog. I mean, I haven't even gotten to Lies of P yet. That's how backlogged I am.
I think
So if that's going to be the standard, okay, he's entitled to do whatever he wants with his game, but I'm also entitled to do whatever I want with my money. And if he wants my money, then I want certain assurances that this isn't ideological. And it's not unreasonable for me to set that as a goalpost when so many other games have fit the same pattern, and of course it has turned out to be ideological. And yes, Vavra played straight with us in the past, but that was when he owned his own company and he could. Now, he's under the thumb of a publisher that has a long history of fucking around.
yeah. To be clear, like my position is always that you can buy or not buy whatever product you want. But like, is your position still though that like that you have an expectation or that they should be obligated, not like legally, but in some moral capacity to like make up for the injustices of society, right? Like that it's an injustice in society today that game developers, in your view, are terrified to make a game where a white character criticizes an African country because it would be seen as racist by some people. Uh, so do other game developers, any game developer, Daniel Vavra, anybody else, do they have an obligation to like correct for that injustice by like sending a message with their game that like no, you can criticize black countries with white characters or vice versa? Like I don't think they have an obligation for that. I think they have an obligation to make a good game. And if you don't want to buy it,
Well,
that's your
then
choice, but it's not an obligation.
then I would say that if you don't want to do that, then maybe you should leave that kind of content out of the game entirely. You know, if you are saying on the one hand, well, this is my creative vision to have these kinds of nationalistic characters, but you're also, oh, well, I'm too afraid of the woke backlash to do it in the politically incorrect way, then you're already compromising your creative vision. So is it creative vision or is it fear? Which one?
Well, but it could just. Well, do you at least let's hypothetically, right? Do you think it can be the case that he has this vision for his artwork that has Musa being a nationalist, but like just hypothetically doesn't have other nationalistic characters? It's basically just him.
Okay, but sure, hypothetically, yes. But what would you guess the statistical chances are that that's the only way it appears in every game with similar content?
Well, I don't know actually because I don't know how many like I don't know if we can.
Maybe not this specific thing, but it would also be very similar on things like the race swapping of mythological or previously established characters, stuff like that. All of these double standards.
But this isn't
What
like a.
would you say
Like
that the
like Netflix, right?
statistical odds are that it only goes the one way, but every time it's always just because that developer had a completely free creative vision to do it that way?
I don't think that's like always the case. No, I think there probably are like pressures that people feel, especially when they're going to do something that's
Exactly.
perceived as controversial. But like, I don't think there's anything wrong with Busa being nationalistic, and I think that I want to live in a world where game developers can have nationalistic characters in their games, and
Okay,
that doesn't mean the developer even endorses that message, right? The
but
character.
what are the statistical chances that every time this kind of controversial content, whether it is directly and specifically nationalistic characters or something similar, really anything to do with race or identity, what are the statistical chances that every time it comes up, it only goes in the one direction? They are very, very, very low that is always free creative vision.
Well, apparently it's not always one direction, since the other controversy we're talking about is whether or not we can have gay characters in games, right?
Well, no,
I'm sorry.
they did. They
Yeah.
did, despite previously saying that Henry was a heterosexual. They did put this in. Nobody cared in the previous game when it was some NPC because there was a gay character in the previous game and nobody objected. But Henry was expressly stated to be straight, not people assumed because straight is default or whatever, but the developer directly said he is straight. And now he's saying otherwise.
We're probably never going to agree on the Musa stuff. Can I want to give you a chance to give your closing statements on the Musa stuff, and then I'll make mine. But I want to give Cheryl and Airplay here a chance to weigh in on the Musa controversy and give their thoughts first here.
Um, I don't know. I'm not really offended by it. Um, I mean, I could see. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for equal. Well, I guess equal representation within reason. I mean, some of those recent Netflix stuff where they're race swapping, where it's not historically accurate, is kind of goofy. So, I don't know. I mean, the developer has a right to do what they want, but yeah, they're obviously it's hard to please everybody. So I don't know if they can if it's you can't really it's hard to win everybody over. So I don't know. I'm personally not bothered by it, but again, I haven't really seen the whole thing. I guess until the game comes out, you see everything in context. Is that where it stops with just that little comment, or is it pushed further? I don't know. So that's just kind of where I'm at, I guess.
And Airplay.
I'm
Okay.
I'm more annoyed by the fact that they called the first game that they gave the first game a subtitle and didn't change it for the second game. That they called it Kingdom Come Deliverance and they called the sequel Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
But what about Musa?
Musa, whatever. Yeah, people back in those days were really national. Yeah, people back in those days were really nationalistic. Where it's fine if and about the character is I it's not real. Let art. My view is just let artists be free to create what they want, and you know if it's woke or not. Again, I think that's a really boring discussion.
Okay. Now, Oron, do you want to give your closing statement first, or do you want to go after me? That way you can respond to anything I say.
You go first.
I haven't like prepared anything. I'll just do off the cuff. Um, if you want to boycott the game, you're more than welcome to. It's your right as a consumer. Um, I do have questions about like the idea of encouraging other people to boycott it. If people are doing that, I don't know if that's your position necessarily. I think I don't know how I feel about people encouraging other people to boycott games on the basis of artistic content within them. I don't know if that's censorship or not. I'm gonna have to think about that a lot more. I lean towards it probably is. It probably is suppressive of the artwork to some extent or another. And I think that that probably qualifies it as being like a legal form of censorship. It's not against the law to do that, of course, but I think that it probably does encourage a stifling of works of art, including stifling of works of art where you're going to have nationalistic characters like Musa. And I don't think the outcome for this, I don't think that most likely it's going to be that like everyone looks around and they're like, you know what, Oron and these people are right. What we need to do is have a greater diversity of characters. We need to have white nationalists and black nationalists. Or well, he's not a black nationalist. He's a Mali nationalist, right? But like,
He's a nationalist who is black.
yeah, he's a nationalist who is black. But like, I don't think that things are going to move in that direction if the game fails and it fails specifically because people boycotted it, encouraged others to do so because they were upset about this nationalistic character who is happens to be black. Um, I think that it's better to have all types of art, and I don't think that it's the responsibility of any one individual game developer to make up for like the injustices of society, including by like making up for the fact that there's like a lack of representation of like nationalists who are white in other games. I don't think that's like Daniel Vavra's job. But anyway, that's my thoughts. You can respond to whatever you want, make whatever points you want. It's all yours.
I don't think that it's his job to correct these things either. But I also think that if you include a bunch of controversial content that touches on all of this identity politics stuff, but you only do it in the ways that align with one particular ideology, people are reasonably going to come to a conclusion that it is likely, not certain, not proven, but likely, that that ideology influenced the decision. Especially when you are a subsidiary of a company that has made decisions based on this ideology in the past. Now, could I ever sell that to a courtroom and get a verdict in my favor based on that as my proof? Of course not. It isn't enough evidence. But when we're talking about buying decisions, that isn't the standard of evidence. A person who is selling a product has to actively earn the money of their customers. You have to convince people that they are going to like what you are selling them. They don't have to come up with some form of proof that they definitely won't. And Daniel Vavra has not done a very good job of convincing me that I'm going to like his product. I think that I will probably end up in a situation where I am mostly running around having fun, and then every once in a while coming on a public service announcement where I pay a little tax of my time learning the lessons that the Embracer group wants to teach me before I can go back to having fun. And that's not something I pay money to do.
Okay. Now we have three more topics I want to cover. We can be super quick. One of them's the gay topic, one of them's the Code Violet controversy, and then one of them's the final thoughts on the state of the culture war. We can be pretty quick if that's all right, because I kind of want to wrap it up soonish. We can go in a minute. But first, the gay stuff. I just let everybody give like a brief 2-minute thing. We'd have to go back and forth unless people really want to. Um, my opening statement on this is just I don't care if the character's gay. I don't care if like 8 years ago they made a comment on YouTube saying that the character is canonically straight, and then now they added a gay option. It's a role-playing game. Um, we don't know why they even didn't do that back then. Maybe it was because they didn't have the resources. Maybe it's because it was their artistic vision at the time to have him be gay, to be straight, I mean. Or maybe it was because they were afraid of people being homophobic at the time and not and responding poorly, because there was backlash to past games that had gay characters in them from people who didn't like them for homophobic reasons, like Mass Effect, for instance. The first Mass Effect game was criticized on those grounds. Um, so yeah, I don't care if you don't want to play Henry as a gay character. Either one, don't buy the game, which you're not. You specifically aren't. Um, or two, like just don't make that choice. But I don't really care. Anyone else can go next if they want.
I don't like being lied to or screwed around with. And when people ask questions about why a developer has gone back on something they previously said, they should at the very least be entitled to a serious and honest answer and not to get made fun of by some community manager. That's not an acceptable way to do PR, and it's not an acceptable way to interact with your customers.
Yeah, I think it's silly, changing the sexual preferences of a character just to appease, whatever the LGBT community or whatever. I think that's kind of silly. I mean, they can introduce other characters, but to alter that kind of stuff, I don't know. But I mean, I'm happy that it's not forced. Like those rumors were originally saying. So that's that, or yeah. So I'm happy about that. I mean, ultimately, I guess I don't think Again, I don't think this is a game I'm going to buy with my own personal money. However, if we're sent a review code, I'll be happy to check it out. But I'm not going to go out of my way for it. But I'm just glad that it's not being forced or bludgeoned on the people. You're gonna like to play this gay sex scene right here. But yeah. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
If Luke Skywalker can go from kissing Leia in one movie to her being his sister in the next, yeah, a character can go from being straight in one game to being bi or gay in the next. It's
To be clear, Luke did not know at the time that she was his sister.
But
did
she
he?
always knew. Remember? She does say that. I always knew.
You have a point, and that's actually disturbing if you think about it. Well, that's a new way to view Star Wars.
Mhm.
I'm sure that wasn't like the writer's intent. They probably just like didn't think about how that
no,
line affected.
I don't think they
Yeah.
meant that statement to be literal. They meant she felt some kind of instinctive closeness towards
Yeah.
him. Not she, though she is psychic.
Force
It's-
sensitive.
It's hard to get around that. She can read minds.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh, were you done with your point, Airplay? Or did you have
Yeah.
more you wanted to add?
No.
Okay, so we do have this one's. I don't think there's gonna be a huge amount of like discourse on this one, but we can talk about it a lot if you want. Code Violet, upcoming video game, looks like it's inspired by Dino Crisis, which Dino Crisis is fucking awesome. So looks exciting. They recently announced that they're going to be PS5 exclusive, no PC release at all. But the reasoning for it's a little bit weird. The reasoning for their decision not to release it on PC is because they're afraid that people are going to mod the characters and make them look more attractive, which I found to be like one, insulting towards PC gamers and people, and two, it's a single player game, or at least mostly single player. So like, why do they care what people do in the privacy of their own home with their own games? It just seemed like it was moralizing and grandstanding for no reason, and just insulting to their fan base, PC players especially. But I'll let everybody weigh in.
I mean, that's their choice. I mean, they're gonna lose out on a whole lot of sales. And then it's one thing to I guess accuse their PC players of being perverts. Now, granted, a lot of games have a big modding community, and that's usually a given on a mod. There's always a whatever. There's more. I think there's more take clothes offs than put clothes on mods out there. I'm just saying. But but again, it's going to be their loss. So their choice, their loss. I don't know. That's the way. I don't see any other way around it. Maybe they'll come around and be like, no, we didn't get the sales we want, so here it's on Epic or here it's on Steam or whatever. But I don't know. Ultimately, it's their decision.
Well, what am I going to do about it? Not buy it? I can't buy it anyway. I don't have a PS5. Like, I literally rented a PS5 from a rent-a-center to play Stellar Blade on it, because that's how much I wanted to play Stellar Blade. But there is basically no other game this generation that I'm going to go to that kind of trouble for. If they the game looked good based on that trailer. If it were on PC, I might have bought it. I thought the main character was very attractive, and obviously, my position on that. I want to encourage that. But it's not a game that I'm so desperate for that I'm going to buy a PS5 just to play it, or I'm going to rent a PS5 and then only be able to play the game that I bought for a couple of weeks. So, I can't exactly threaten to boycott them because I couldn't buy their game to begin with. It's their foot to shoot themselves in, but that's what they're doing. And it is so silly that I have to question whether this is their real motive, or if Sony's handed them a sack of cash for exclusivity and they're just saying this because they think it'll grab more headlines that way.
That's actually really interesting. I will, before airplay goes, I guess, because I'm a dick. I think that is an interesting point too, because they had to have known this was going to be like a controversial hot take, and there's like no real reason for them to like say this. Like even if it's the real reason, like they don't gain anything other than press and notoriety, right? For this, so I wonder if like it was just a marketing ploy. They just wanted to purposely, but it doesn't make them look good though. That's the thing. Airplay, do you want to go?
Yeah, if they think that will prevent not being on PC, will prevent modders from making perverse stuff in their game. People have really, they don't know the extent to what the perverts will go to mod games.
Oh, that's another point worth bringing up, is that this is absolutely going to cause a Streisand effect. People who don't even buy this game are going to create nude fan art of this character. They are going to mod nude versions of her into entirely different games. They are going to go out of their way to create naughty content of this character just to spite this developer for doing this, because that's how the internet works.
Yes, it's based.
Mm-hmm.
So, state of the culture war. I'll go last on this one. I want to hear what everyone else thinks. Actually, I don't really have any strong thoughts here. What is who have we heard from the least so far?
Airplay.
I think it is
Yeah.
Airplay. Do you want to give us your thoughts on where we're at with the culture war stuff, or the video game culture war, I guess, specifically? Like, what do you think's going on currently? Where are we at with this?
Well, if we take Gamergate as the example, what happens in the video game space, the rest of the world does follow shortly after, and with this Goonergate thing, I feel like that this is just going to be a preview for what we're going to be seeing in the wider culture. That we're going to, what if Altist has said on numerous occasions that the pendulum swing to the left has been so great in recent years that he's that he is genuinely afraid of what the reaction from the right is going to be. And it's not like we haven't seen this before, as we all said. We've seen right-wing moral panics in the past, especially surrounding video games and other hobbies, and and it would really depend on if people have a long-term memory, which we know they don't have, but there are people who will not remember the last decade or the decade before that, and will continue to use the thinnest possible excuses to defend emotional their their the really conclusions and actions that they've derived for emotional reasons. It sort of brings it all together, don't you?
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I
Or
can go, I guess.
you can respond to Airplay too if you wanted to, if you had anything you want to disagree
Oh,
about.
No, there's
no, I don't really disagree. I mean, I just think we're in a culture right now. I mean, not necessarily in gaming and even just a lot of things in general where, you go woke, go broke. So if companies push agendas too hard, people are going to revolt and revolt against that or boycott that product. And the same thing with, I mean, it could also go, for religion, right? You push your religion down too much. So if you smack people with the Bible, they're not going to really find the Bible that interesting if they just got beat in the head with it. So, it's just a matter of, context and obviously, again, and I don't think people not liking hypocrites. I mean, that's really not anything new. So I don't know. I'm just curious how what's gonna change. In game development. If what they're gonna do. It's hard to please everybody. So and just basically how people are gonna react. So I think it's it's just kind of just getting started. And just see where it goes and see what how game developers are going to react to people not buying games like that PlayStation 5 exclusive. I'm curious how that's going to pan out, how their sales are going to be. And it'd be funny to watch it backtrack and then watch it get put on PC. Or that Streisand effect would be pretty darn funny too, which is probably a given. So I mean, I don't know. People, there's a lot of same factors in play. Like I said, people don't like hypocrisy. And that's age. That's been people don't like they don't want to be lied to either. So that's nothing new. So yeah. So now it's just a matter of just seeing how people react and how much pushback develop. People will not want to. So how many people are not going to buy the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 game because got gay stuff in there, or they make their character gay all of a sudden, or bi, or whatever the case. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I have so much of a backlog myself. I got other things to play, so I don't care. But anyway, so that's what I'm thinking. There's still some things that don't change, but but people are starting to get fed up with things too. So that's about it.
Oh, thank you. Oron, do you want to give your closing thoughts on the culture war, where we're at with this?
I'm cautiously optimistic. Obviously, so soon after an election, we're in a transitional period. Things are shaking out very differently than they did in 2017, where Trump technically won the election, but he lost the popular vote and he was widely perceived as unpopular. This election, on the other hand, was very much seen as a cultural backlash against the Democrats, and Trump did win the popular vote. And the response has been very different. Instead of seeing a increase in censorship from things like social media sites, the the executives of them are all cozying up to Trump, and they are promising to reduce or eliminate censorship. I think that things are going to go. There's not going to be a second Great Awakening like there was in 2017. But exactly what is going to happen, I don't know. Some of it will depend on whether Trump is able to have a successful presidency or whether he completely screws up. But also, I think that yes, the religious right may attempt to reassert itself, but while I can't rule it out, I think their odds of success in establishing their own censorship regime are low, because at the end of the day, most of the creative industries still lean left, and Trump will not be able to impose that kind of censorship by law because there are supermajority Supreme Court decisions against that sort of thing that are unlikely to be overturned by the current court. And they were made by a court with a very similar composition. That was the decision that enshrined First Amendment protections of video games was written by Antonin Scalia. I don't think that the court is going to overturn that. And so I don't think they're going to succeed in doing that, but I actually think that if they try too hard, they may end up giving some of these companies that have given into a lot of this woke stuff and a lot of the woke censorship, but realize that it's backfiring on them, a kind of acceptable off-ramp to go back on it. Because now a so-called acceptable target, the religious right, the big scary Nazi whatever, is also calling for that kind of censorship of things like sex, and sex sells like it always did. So they can be perceived as allowing more sex appeal and more nudity and things like that into their media again, and it will be taken as a backlash against the religious right or a resistance to the religious right rather than a repudiation of the left, which they're more hesitant to do because they're usually on the left. So it may end up blowing up in the faces of people like Melanie Mack, and we may end up thanking her a few years from now for playing wrestling heel.
Yeah, I don't know where things go from here. I think that the woke ideology has been more or less dying for at least like the past year or two. I think the overtone window is opened back up. I don't know if the wokeness stuff is going to come back. I know that some people like no opinion have speculated that part of the reason for this might be the overproduction of elites, quote unquote, that too many people were getting sociology degrees or social science degrees rather, but there weren't or humanities degrees, but there weren't enough jobs for those people in those fields, and this resulted in a lot of people, one feeling like they aren't able to live up to their dreams, and then two, uh, having like a lot of sociology type language that they use in their lives. But I think that issue had it actually corrected itself like in 2010 according to like the data that No Opinion was showing. So if indeed the overproduction of elites was what caused wokeness to like balloon and become like this big thing, then like that probably isn't coming back. But if it was other factors, like there's probably a bunch of different things that caused wokeness to happen in the first place, not one monocausal explanation. Um, but yeah, I think it's going away for good. I think there will be some moments where you see like the woke stuff. Like I think that like some of the subreddits banning X. I don't know if that's like woke quote unquote, but like I think it's bad. And that's like private subreddits. It's not even Reddit itself, so like it doesn't really matter.
But
But
it's based on a false pretense. Like, can we all agree here that Elon Musk did not perform a Nazi salute?
my heart goes
Yeah,
out to you.
Yeah.
yeah,
That was not his intention. Even the Anti-Defamation League, who have the highest false positive rate in the world for anti-Semitism, even they say that's not what happened. It was obviously not his intention. And almost every major politician, including Obama, Hillary, AOC, Biden, Kamala, they have all been photographed from similar angles, waving to a crowd in a way that, if you freeze frame it, can look like a
Well,
narcissist.
he didn't just freeze frame. Like he did like a whole like my heart goes out to you, and he did this, and he like spun around, and he like he's just autistic. It was
He's
just
an
like an autism
exuberant
moment.
autistic man who
Yeah,
didn't think for a second what it would look like.
yeah,
But he
Yeah.
or
this
yeah,
this
or
whole
maybe he like knew it was like a Roman salute, but like he thought it was like cool and didn't associate with the
I don't
Nazis.
think
I
that's at
don't I
all
don't
what
think he was dog whistling. But yeah.
I think he is just an autist.
But he's also a troll since he pretended to be like 20-year-old kid
Like
for like
there is
the
a
past like 6 months. Adrian
chance.
Dittman, right?
There is a tiny chance that he was trolling, and if
Yeah.
he was, they are falling for it hook, line, and
Yeah,
sinker.
and they
But
shouldn't. They shouldn't.
I think most likely
Keep their
he
powder
just
dry
got
for
excited.
better things. But yeah, anyway,
He
the woke
just
right
got
stuff.
excited.
I hope that like, well, I think it's one refreshing that people have opposed the Goonergate people so much. Like everybody's against them practically. Like even like you don't like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and they don't like it either, but you like dislike it for different reasons, and you still don't like them. So like I don't know. I feel like they're kind of screwed. I don't think there's enough people in that cohort to
They
like
make
be
themselves
successful.
sound far too silly.
But that could change too. I do think there is almost like I haven't seen studies on this. I shouldn't say anything. My personal experience with people, I do think that some people who are religious in our society, um, maybe because of the woke stuff, they feel like an embattled minority, and so they've like quadruple, tripled down on like being the most extreme person possible and like the most extreme version of their faith. Um, I guess in response to wokeness.
Probably.
Yeah, and I don't think that's good. But I don't know how many people that is. Like, is that
I,
like yeah?
Based on how this is going so far on Twitter, I don't think it's that many. They have very little institutional backing, and they are just so bad at this that they make themselves seem like clowns.
So
Like we are not looking at another Anita in Melanie Mack, because Anita could hide all of her censorious intent behind layer upon layer upon layer of sociological language and complicated doublethink. And Melanie's just yelling faggot into a camera. Like the degree of sophistication that we're dealing with here is just night and day.
yeah. Well, but that obviously motivates one person. Like you could have like a super like a well-read someone like Cheryl, right? But evil. Like if you
That's
had like
not who's
you have the
showing up.
knowledge, you can cite every Bible verse by heart, and you're like, oh well, this game violates Leviticus 24:17 and Matthew
But
42.
that's not what's showing up. That's not what we're getting. We're the quality of enemies is declining.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have, all things considered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know Airplay. This panel actually was supposed to be a conversation between Airplay at first, but I invited other people because I thought it could be fun. But Airplay, one of the things you wanted to talk with me about, and we don't have to talk about this on air. We can turn off the camera right now, shut the stream down,
Okay.
but we can talk about it on air if you want. Is that I ran a successful Kickstarter campaign, and I think you wanted to talk to me about that.
Oh, we could talk about that later. I just want to congratulate you on how things went for you, and if you could help me in the future with any kind of crowdfunding,
So,
I'm interested. And yeah, though recently I've been very well. Today I had an interview. I'm not gonna say with who, but things are but I'm really excited about the future. I know that this year I'm gonna try to the uh fulfill fulfill my backers rewards from my original Kickstarter back in, I believe it was like 2021, and just to try to get I wanted I wanted the digital release and the Blu-ray release to be part of want to be part of an official commercial release, after I've gotten all the legal stuff worked out, because I'm pretty paranoid about fair fair use. I want to make sure I cross every T and dot every I, but maybe later this year. I've resubmitted the at least part 1 to a few film festivals, to like to a few film festivals. Hopefully, with the short length, it would have a better chance. And you know, I've been in communication with some I've been in communication with some people. Like when you mentioned uh, the elite overproduction theory of wokeness. Have you read We Have Never Been Woke yet?
No,
Have
I'm
we
not. I'm not read. Is it a book or article? But
a
I
book?
didn't want to get too hung up. I know that like everybody's here for different
We have
reasons. We can.
we have never been woke. Well, it's a good book about,
Well, we don't have.
trying to explain the phenomenon of wokeness that we've seen over the past decade. It was written by a scholar named Musa Al-Gharbi, who teaches at what's that?
Musa.
Musa,
Uh oh. Is he a
Musa, yeah.
nationalist?
Oh, quick. Oh, he actually is Muslim, but he's a Muslim convert. He's a Black American Muslim
Anyway, I
convert,
just. I just.
and
Do you have any advice? I mean, sorry. I don't want
yeah,
to.
and
I,
he teaches. And Musa Al Garbi, he teaches at Stony Brook University, which is in my area. So yeah, so just things are gonna try to like things are looking up for, uh, and so and he's written on Gamergate in the past, and he's actually referenced Chris Ferguson's
oh.
paper with Brad Glasgow. So
Yeah, well, thank you for congratulating me. I mean, it was a group effort. Everybody chipped in. But
yeah,
yeah, and I would be happy to give you advice and feedback and ideas to help you with your efforts. I will say I probably won't be endorsing your work. I like the Airplay documentary. You can even quote me by
yes,
saying it's great, or I've praised it at many occasions. But
uh-huh.
I don't. The that you hadn't fulfilled your previous crowdfunding obligations to your backers, I
Yeah.
cannot, in good conscience, endorse your work. Endorse the
Okay.
Kickstarter or whatever you do, right? I can't endorse a second crowdfunding for the same
I'm not
project.
going to run a second Kickstarter before I, fulfill the. That was one thing I wanted to do, is that this year I wanted to fulfill the uh backers goals for, yeah,
But yeah, I'm happy to give you advice and stuff like that, and I'll even interview you and have you on my show to talk about any future works you do, like with that, right? If you do decide to run a campaign, I'll grill you on it, and be fair too. But yeah, no, I think it's a good documentary. I think you did a good job. It's very important to me that I don't endorse works where someone has in the past fucked up like that. And I think that is something that is
fucked
going to
up.
hurt you if you try to do this again. But you are welcome to try, and clearly you can succeed with it, right? I just did.
Yeah,
There is
I've
money,
just
there is
been.
interest, but it's
Yeah,
yeah, but I maybe don't look at doing a second crowdfunder. I mean, I suggested in the past that you could look at it, but uh, but
yeah,
but it just looks so bad. I'm sorry, but like anyway, whatever. I don't want to shit on you. I brought this up so in case you had any questions or anything like that. Look, honestly, the best things that I could recommend just real quick off the top of my head, and you guys are welcome
yeah.
to leave if you want, or if you want to say anything too, you're more than welcome to. We're gonna end this conversation in like 5 minutes, but um, it was laying out a lot of groundwork ahead of time. Like, oh my, I was supposed to launch it in like November, but I decided to postpone it so I could do more work. So
Yeah.
I had videos coming out every single day promoting the
Hmm.
message at the very end of each video to back the Kickstarter. I also like created a whole marketing plan ahead of time where I had shows I was going on. I had Twitter spaces I was doing with multiple different content creators who were involved, who I've interviewed, where they can share their experiences and take questions from the public. I did Ask Me Anythings on multiple different communities. Some of those were successful. Some of those I don't think really helped at all. But yeah, and I also friends and family too. Like I sent letters to my real life friends and family. I was like, hey, look, it's launching now. And people in my friends and family were more or less aware of it. Um, and I got maybe like 5 or 6 people. I got maybe like if you well, I got maybe like six or seven of the backers were real life backers. But these are people who are family members or friends, and so they're giving a lot of money too, and that really helped. I think having friends and family chip in. So that's something to look at as well. And I also was like a relentless. You all know, I was relentless in DMs with you people.
Yeah.
Like all throughout, and but like that's yeah. You have to do you have to be you're for you personally, Airplay,
Yeah.
because you have difficulty at times communicating with people. I would say um, that I would have to be like really good. I think to say I just lost it. I don't just but I would say that like one thing you have to do is just like um, be proactive. That's what it was. It was proactive. Yeah, you have to be proactive. You like I know I know that sometimes it can be difficult. And you're like, should I reach out to this person? Should I not? I don't want to inconvenience them. They got a lot going on right now. But you gotta be the strongest advocate you could ever possibly be for yourself and your project and your work, because that's your job. And
Yeah.
so you gotta put aside the the concerns that like, oh, am I engaging in a faux pas? Like like obviously like some things in real life can be faux pas, right? But you gotta nobody like, here's the thing too, like nobody actually cares like if you email them, like unless you're like sending them death threats or some crazy shit, right? But like nobody's gonna
Yeah.
care and be like, hey, look, I'm working on this project. I've seen your work, I think you'd be interested in it. Or even just emailing them cold. Like nobody's going to be offended by that, and if they are, like just move on to the next person. Nobody cares. But don't
Okay.
ever get hung up on like I'm really worried how they're going to personally take this if I reach out to them about a business thing. Like nobody, yeah. Just you have to be super
Yeah.
aggressive and you have to fight for yourself.
Yeah.
Because
And yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to say. I'm gonna work on getting my original, getting the backers rewards to my original backers in this year. In this year, hopefully, because it was always the backers rewards have always been an estimate. Didn't know what I wanted to make sure that every legal T and I wanted it to be part of this official release, like an official commercial release, but it looks like I'm gonna make the Blu-ray and digital copy, just something exclusive for the backer, make something exclusive for the backers, and the t-shirts and whatnot, and that is very easy to that is something very easy to do. So wanted to remind my backers that I did not forget them, that I'm not gonna give up on them, and that hopefully by the eh, hopefully by the 10th anniversary of the airplay of the actual airplay event, we'll have something ready to provide.
Well,
Ready
if you
to
don't and you're in an embarrassing situation, just call in a bomb threat and evacuate the building. It's in the tradition of airplay.
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
does
But
anyone have also have
things
any? Oh, God.
things are really things I've been looking up, as I've been saying.
That's good. No, and good luck with the job interview for sure. Like, and don't be bummed out if you don't get it. Like, I actually applied
Oh,
for.
it's the interview that I had earlier today. It wasn't a job interview thing. It was actually for something else, something kind of unrelated
Okay.
to
Well,
this, but it's something that might propel me in my career and whatnot.
Well, good luck with that. I
So
know.
yeah, I'm not going to run another crowdfunding campaign before I, fulfill my backers' rewards.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna.
And
For
I
the
say that
previous
as
one.
someone who like may run a second one while working on this, but that's only if I might run one for the Champions of Alanthea book I'm working on, and the Ukraine book too. But if I did that, it would be after all the work was done, and so
Yeah,
all the Kickstarter money would just go to marketing basically. So
yeah,
yeah, but yeah, I would only ever do that if I already had the finished product basically. Um, while I still have the GamerGate one I'm working on.
yeah.
But anyway, does anyone else have anything you want to talk about, or anything advice you want to give to Airplay about him trying to be successful with his stuff?
No, we're pretty small time, so I can't really help out too much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Do you
Yeah.
want to shout yourselves out? Tell people where they can find your work, and then we'll close her up.
All right. So yeah, Cheryl Gress at ChristCenterGamer.com. You can find us. Find me on Twitter. I'm at Divine Games. And yeah, we also have YouTube /CCGR. And I think if you want to head out and see our Discord server, it should be discord.gg/CCGR. But yeah, that's pretty much most of our main ones right now.
Okay. Oron, do you want to shout yourself out, or
I'm Oron Burner at Twitter or on Twitter because my original account got shut down by the old Twitter administration.
and you Airplay? Oh, sorry, you had more.
You can find me on YouTube at Airplay Doc, and you can watch the Airplay documentary on my Patreon at patreon.com/metalhead films.
And if you're watching this, you know where you can find me. So like the video, comment, subscribe, leave comments. I like comments. Take care. Have a good night.